Humph! You still want to flee? Lu Fang said balefully. Ling Han smiled. What is it? Are you guys planning to kill me and snatch my treasure? So what if I am? Lu Fang said. This is not the marketplace. In the marketplace, they indeed did not dare make a move. No one could ignore the words of a saint, but there was no rule that said they could not make a move here. A core formation tier cultivator and a true self tier cultivator, and one at the consummate level of the true self tier at that. How could it be that they would not be able to suppress two core formation tier cultivators? Humph, there was no need for Tu Yang to make a move. He alone would be able to deal with it. How do the two of you want to die? Lu Fang asked. Ling Han shook his head. Just because of this little bit of conflict, you guys want to commit murder? Two pieces of trash. So what if I kill you? Lu Fang said proudly, appearing to be completely unconcerned. Ling Han cracked a smile. I'll remember you. Lu Fang smirked coldly. So what if you remembered? Do you still want to make a comeback? Let's go, Ling Han said. With a wave of his hand, he and the large black dog disappeared into thin air. Where was he? Tu Yang was startled. Even though he looked like he had fallen asleep, he had actually already used the power of regulations to seal off the surrounding space. It was impossible for a cultivator at the core formation tier to escape. What was going on here? An escape seal? Lu Fang looked over. Tu Yang frowned slightly. Someone who can use the escape seal should have an extraordinary background. Lu Fang hesitated slightly, then said proudly, at most, they would be the same as us and similarly come from the Holy Land. However, they are clearly far from being our match, and that is why they fled at the first instant. When the true dragon abyss opens, I will crush them to death. Tu Yang pondered for a moment before frowning. Lu Fang was ranked in the top 100 of the Galaxy Network, and there were truly only a handful of people at the same cultivation level that was stronger than him. Moreover, the two people from before definitely weren't among them. In the distance, Ling Han and the large black dog's figures appeared. Just now, it was naturally Ling Han who had used the ley lines to transport them away. After so many days, how could it be that Ling Han still hadn't mastered the ley lines here? This was, after all, once a great planet. In fact, it had even given birth to the true dragon before. Even if it had been shattered, a portion of the ley lines had still been preserved. However, the earth chi was already very weak. These two bastards actually want to kill Grandpa Dog, the large black dog said angrily. When the true dragon abyss opens, we'll catch that guy called Lu Fang and beat him up. All right. Ling Han smiled faintly. What the hell is this clay figurine? The large black dog took out the clay figurine, but when he swept his gaze over it, this did not seem to be any kind of treasure. It did not have any complicated veined patterns, nor did it exude a captivating pressure. It injected mystical power into the clay figurine, but the clay figurine didn't change at all. It wasn't like ordinary spirit tools that would glow. It injected its spiritual power into the clay figurine, and there was also no change. It's completely useless? The large black dog was angered. He threw the clay figurine onto the ground, but still nothing happened. Ling Han said calmly, this thing should be extraordinary. Just think, if it was an ordinary item, would it be able to withstand your torment? That's right. The large black dog grabbed the clay figurine again, but after studying it left and right, he couldn't find anything strange. He looked at Ling Han and said, say, could this thing be for kids to play with? It moved the right arm of the clay figurine, and a strange scene appeared. Its right front leg involuntarily moved, as if it was twitching. Fuck! What's going on here? The large black dog was shocked, then came to a sudden realization. Grandpa Dog discovered what this clay figurine was playing at, fiddled with it again. As long as it moved the clay figurine correspondingly, its limbs would also move. After playing for a while, the large black dog was enraged, and he smashed the clay figurine onto the ground again. This is screwing me over. This clay figurine could only torment him. Could it be that it wanted to screw him over in a battle? Which bastard had created this thing? Was he bored? His imagination was running wild. How could one torture himself like this? A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind. He picked up the clay figurine and lightly moved the right arm of the clay figurine. As expected, his right arm also involuntarily raised. He looked towards the large black dog again and used his divine sense to lock onto it. Then he moved the right arm of the clay figurine. Pa! The large black dog's paw immediately slammed into his face. Woof! The large black dog jumped up. What the hell? Why had it slapped itself? Little Han, is this your doing? It immediately turned to look at Ling Han. After all, it had just played with the clay figurine, and it was completely unable to resist this kind of power. No, that was not power, but a kind of regulations, so it could only do as the clay figure did. Ling Han laughed loudly and moved the clay figurine a few more times. The large black dog immediately began to dance, his posture incredibly bewitching. Woof, 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 stop. Little Han, Grandpa Dog will fight you to the death. In the end, Ling Han still stopped. He shared his insights on how to use this clay figurine with the large black dog. If he were to fiddle with the clay figurine, it would be corresponding to himself. He would also be dancing with joy. However, if he first locked onto someone with his divine sense, and then fiddled with the clay figurine, it would be that person that would be moving like the clay figurine. Hiss, this is good stuff. The large black dog immediately became excited. Ling Han also nodded. If one suddenly danced around in battle, then what was the point of continuing the battle? You have to first know the upper limit of cultivation level that this thing targets, he said solemnly. Let's go, let's go, let's go and do the experiment, the large black dog said excitedly. In the eyes of a rascal like him, this clay figurine could become the best treasure for screwing people over. The man and dog went to the marketplace again. There were many people here, so it was best to experiment. After a round, they had more or less figured out the effects of the clay figurines, but there were also a great many people that were unlucky. For some inexplicable reason, they were waving their hands and feet, as if they had gone crazy. Theoretically speaking, there is no upper limit to cultivation level for the clay figurines' effects. However, above the true self tier, there's no way to lock onto one with divine sense at all. The gap in cultivation level is too wide. Though you can control the other party through the clay figurine, you can't do any self-harming actions, such as blowing up your own head with a single punch. At the same time, can only target one person. Ling Han summarized his experience with the large black dog. Although the clay figure wasn't a deadly weapon, just the fact that it could control the actions of their enemies was already extremely awesome. Grandpa Dog really wants to know who made this. The large black dog's eyes were filled with longing. It suits Grandpa Dog's tastes too well. Ling Han laughed loudly. That's collusion, right? Get lost. The Empress and Hunyo also went out shopping. In this aspect, any woman was no exception. Since they were free anyway, Ling Han and the large black dog decided to go out for a walk. Who knows, they might be able to obtain something good like the clay figurine. They set out, heading once more to the marketplace. Brother-in-law, a delicate voice rang out from behind him. Ling Han and the large black dog ignored this. This clearly wasn't referring to them. Brother-in-law. Unexpectedly, this voice sounded again, and it was even closer to them. Little Han, that seems to be calling you, the large black dog said. What kind of joke is that? We're both in disguise now, so how can there be a sister-in-law for me? Ling Han shook his head, but he still turned around to take a look. Then he was dumbfounded. Wasn't this sister-in-law Qi Mengshan? This silver-haired Lolita was quite mischievous. Ling Han naturally remembered his own persona. It wasn't Ling Han now, nor was it Ding Yi. Thus, he should not recognize this little girl. Brother-in-law. Qi Mengshan unexpectedly blocked Ling Han's path. Crossing her arms behind her back, she shook her head and said, Brother-in-law, your attire is far too trashy. Little girl, you've got the wrong person, right? Ling Han asked with a smile. Ling Han Ding Yi. Qi Mengshan counted on her fingers. She then looked at Ling Han and said, Brother-in-law, what's your name now? Ling Han was surprised and looked towards the large black dog. Meanwhile, the large black dog's expression was also filled with shock. This little girl could actually see through their disguises. Gods, it should be known that if the Venerate tier elites didn't pay special attention, even they would very easily be deceived by their disguises. What kind of fucking eyes do you have? Hee hee, it's impossible to fool me, Qi Mengshan, with my eyes, the little girl said proudly. Oh, that's right, brother-in-law, my sister is hosting a banquet 3 days later. You have to come. Hang. If you dare not come, I will reveal your identity. Ling Han was speechless. He had only met this little lowly once. But why did this little lowly keep calling him brother-in-law so intimately? It was very easy for others to misunderstand, all right? If this thought was known to others, countless people would probably line up to beat him up. That was the third most beautiful woman in the galaxy, and you are complaining? That's all. Goodbye, brother-in-law. The silver-haired little Lolita skipped around, and very soon, disappeared from sight. This was baffling. The large black dog was slightly surprised, and nudged Ling Han. Little Han, when did you sleep with her sister? Get lost. Don't spout nonsense. On the other side, the silver-haired little Lolita was smug. Qi Menghan, no matter what, I have to marry you off as soon as possible, so that I won't always be under your control. One moment you'll tell me to cultivate, and the next you'll tell me to sit quietly. You're even more annoying than my mother. If I marry you off, I'll become the imperial daughter. Haha, when the time comes, I'll point my finger here and there, and everyone will have to listen to me. Just thinking about it makes me feel good. So, brother-in-law, you have to work hard. 3 days later, you can directly elope with my sister. Ling Han and the large black dog roamed around the market a few times, but the chances of picking up bargains were naturally pitifully small. How could they pick up treasures time and time again? Thus, they returned empty-handed this time. After returning, the Empress and Hunyo also returned. The Empress was cold and aloof, and did not speak much. However, Hunyo chattered on, talking about what they had encountered today, giggling as she talked. The large black dog wanted nothing more than for the world to be in chaos. He hurriedly related their encounter with the silver-haired little Lolita, and then anticipated the eruption of a battle. As expected, Hunyo immediately bared her canines and rolled up her sleeves. To dare snatch Nyo's Ling Han, Nyo is going to kill her. Meanwhile, the Empress was proud and Sundra. In her eyes, Ling Han was naturally the best man in the world, so it was very normal for any woman to like him. She said, since she is an imperial daughter, she would be of some use. Just marry her. Fuck. Ling Han placed his hand on his forehead. His 2 beautiful wives were 2 complete opposites. One had the temperament of a child, yet wanted to monopolize him, while the other was incredibly proud. Though everything was for his own good, the ideas she came up with were very bad, all right? Marrying the imperial daughter? Putting aside whether he had such thoughts or not, the key was that even if he wanted to take her as wife, would she want to marry him? Furthermore, the imperial daughter was serving the same husband as other women, so how could this possibly be allowed? Did the imperial clan not care about their pride? But no matter what, with the persuasion of the Empress and the large black dog, Ling Han still decided to attend that so-called banquet. If he didn't go, who knew what kind of trouble Qi Mengshan, this little lowly, would cause? This little girl was actually able to see through the soul-forming technique. Could it be that the great emperor's bloodline had suddenly awakened in her? In the next few days, everything was peaceful. Hunyo also wanted to join in on the excitement, but was stopped by the Empress. This time, he was going to court an imperial daughter. How could it be that Hunyo would be allowed to cause trouble? Meanwhile, Ling Han comforted Hunyo. He definitely wouldn't like that Qi Menghan. He only went because he didn't want to expose his identity. After coaxing Hunyo, Ling Han and the large black dog set off. The large black dog naturally didn't want to miss this opportunity, so he shamelessly set off together with him. The Qi clan was an imperial clan, so they were naturally extravagant. They temporarily carved out a large area on the heavenly dragon planet as their exclusive territory, and used their great power to construct a super-large manor in a short amount of time. Here, there were towers and pavilions, and a waterfall appeared out of thin air in the skies, crashing down with waves that gathered into a great lake. There were celestial clouds and celestial light, intertwining to form regulations. Green trees provided shade, filled with vitality. Impressive. This had forcibly transformed a barren land into a paradise on earth. Unfortunately, this was only temporary prosperity. When the Donglin imperial clan left without the maintenance of elites, the waterfall would soon disappear, the lake would dry up, and the green trees would wilt. "Hey, you two! Are you also going to the banquet?" Before they had even reached their destination, they saw an ancient carriage suddenly stop when it passed by them. Then they saw a head poke out of the carriage window. This was a young man, and he was quite handsome. Ling Han smiled. "That's right. I want to join in on the excitement. Come, come, come. Let me give you a ride." This young man was very cordial, and personally opened the carriage door, welcoming Ling Han and the large black dog. Ling Han and the large black dog exchanged a glance. They hadn't exposed their identities, so how had they received such high-standard treatment? "I am Zhao Kuan," this young man said. He was very familiar with them. "Do the two of you have invitations?" "What invitation?" Ling Han shook his head and replied, "No, he hadn't been tricked by Qi Mengshan, this little girl, right? Then you two will be disappointed." Zhao Kuan shook his head. "The imperial clan is hosting a banquet, and not everyone is qualified to attend. You either have to have an invitation, or you can pass 3 stages." "Pass 3 stages?" the large black dog asked. "It's the test set by the Donglin imperial clan. As long as one can pass, they'll be qualified to attend the banquet," Zhao Kuan said. He then shook his head and said, "I advise you people to give up. It's impossible to pass." "Going by that theory, you already have an invitation?" the large black dog asked. He was already thinking of robbing him. "I don't either." Zhao Kuan spread out his hands. Aren't you afraid of being beaten to death?" Zhao Kuan laughed loudly. "Though I do not have an invitation, I have a distant relative who is the Tao child of the Azure Snow Holy Land. He can bring me in." As he said this, his expression was filled with pride. Ling Han and the large black dog finally understood. No wonder this guy was so cordial. He was not hospitable at all, but rather that this guy was incredibly fond of showing off, and deliberately pulled the two of them into the carriage. He would strike a blow on their pride first and then show off his backer. "I can go in, but you guys can't. Come and envy me." Ling Han and the large black dog had seen many weirdos, but to show off to this extent, this Zhao Kuan should be the one and only. The large black dog secretly took out the clay figurine, then began to play tricks. Zhao Kuan exclaimed in surprise. He involuntarily stood up, and then swayed his behind in an incredibly showy manner. "It wasn't me. I didn't," he hurriedly said. He wanted to explain to Ling Han and the large black dog. He wasn't such a coquettish person, but his body couldn't help but twist into an enchanting dance. The large black dog pretended to pale in shock. "What do you mean? Are you trying to flirt with me?" Zhao Kuan was also very helpless. He could not explain, and there was no one forcing him either, but he just couldn't help but dance gracefully, as if there was regulations in the heaven and earth that forced him to do this. He was about to cry. If this matter spread out, how would he be able to face others? The large black dog said, "Since Brother Zhao is in such high spirits, come. Grandpa will help you broadcast live on the Galaxy Network." "No!" Zhao Kuan hurriedly exclaimed. Seeing that the large black dog was facing him, he hurriedly clapped his hands on the carriage. Pong, his whole person instantly shot out of the carriage. His feet were no longer under his control, but as a mighty cauldron forging tier cultivator, he could completely move with his bare hands. With this sudden change, the carriage instantly stopped. The coachman was shocked. "What did you guys do to young master?" Ling Han and the large black dog exchanged looks, then shrugged in unison, pretending to be innocent. "This has nothing to do with them," Zhao Kuan said from afar, as he continued to gesticulate. He was so bewitching that the coachman broke out in a cold sweat. What was going on with this young master? Had he been bewitched? Meanwhile, Ling Han looked towards the large black dog and transmitted a message, "That's about enough." Only then did the large black dog reluctantly put away the clay figurine. He hadn't played enough yet. However, it didn't matter. There would definitely be a lot of insensible people at the banquet, and there would definitely be others for it to play with. Zhao Kuan walked back, bowed to Ling Han and the large black dog, and said, "Please keep today's matter a secret for me. Don't worry." The large black dog patted his chest and said, "I'm a tight-lipped person. See, I've never told you that the imperial daughter of the Donglin imperial clan likes Ling Han, right?" Zhao Kuan couldn't help but wipe away the cold sweat on his forehead. How could he be at ease with such a big mouth? Ling Han smiled and said, "He loves to joke, so it's fine." Only then did Zhao Kuan breathe a sigh of relief. Ling Han looked much more reliable than the large black dog. The carriage traveled for a while longer, and then entered into the territory of the Donglin imperial clan. Though this was only temporarily allocated, who would dare not take the imperial clan seriously? "Stop the carriage." Immediately, someone flew down from the sky. This was a middle-aged man who was in the core formation tier. After the carriage stopped, he said, "Show me your invitation." Zhao Kuan hurriedly walked out, clasped his hands and said, "This lord, I am Zhao Kuan. I have a clan brother, whose name is Invitation." The middle-aged man said darkly, interrupting Zhao Kuan's words, "If you don't have an invitation, withdraw immediately." Zhao Kuan hurriedly had the coachman steer the carriage back a little. Then, he looked towards Ling Han and the large black dog, and said with a smile, Don't worry. I will immediately contact that distant clan brother of mine, and ask him to step out. Who knows, he may be able to bring the two of you in as well." Looking at the smug expression on his face, he wanted nothing more than to ascend to the heavens. Ling Han and the large black dog both smiled. "Come, continue your performance." Zhao Kuan opened the connection device and conversed with that distant clan brother. This was divine sense level and there was no need to speak. However, Ling Han and the large black dog could clearly see that this guy's expression was becoming uglier and uglier, almost jumping up and down in anger. Needless to say, they knew what was going on. Clearly, this guy could not enter. After another while, Zhao Kuan suddenly looked pleased. Then, he quickly hung up the connection device. "My clan brother will be here soon," he said. "Distant clan brother," the large black dog added. This instantly caused Zhao Kuan's expression to darken. "Fuck, there is no need for you to fill in the blanks so clearly." After a while, a figure flew over from the distance, then stopped by the side of the carriage. Ling Han and the large black dog exchanged a look, both looking surprised. This was too coincidental, wasn't it? Lu Fang. This distant cousin of Zhao Kuan was actually Lu Fang. "Clan brother." Zhao Kuan immediately went up to greet him, his face all smiles. Lu Fang, on the other hand, did not notice Ling Han and the large black dog. He was too conceited, so why would he deliberately pay attention to two nameless pawns? "Follow me," Lu Fang said. "Clan brother, I still have two friends. Can I bring them along?" Zhao Kuan was still very generous. Of course, it was also possible that his habit of showing off had taken effect again. After he brought Ling Han and the large black dog in, he wanted to admire the stunned expressions of these two people, and he must like to show off. Lu Fang frowned. He was only a disciple of the Holy Land, though he was ranked highly on the Galaxy Network, but for the Imperial clan, what was that worth? For the sake of a distant relative, he shamelessly went to beg others, and only then did he manage to obtain a spot to bring Zhao Kuan in. However, did he really think that the Imperial clan was his home? He could bring as many people as he wanted? "Shut up," he rebuked. Then he turned to look at Ling Han and the large black dog. He wanted to see who these two shameless people were. "It's you guys." His eyes swept over them, and he couldn't help but be startled. "Are you surprised?" The large black dog spread his hands. "Are you shocked? Clan brother, you know them?" Zhao Kuan approached and asked cautiously. In his eyes, Lu Fang was like a god, ranked in the top 100 of Galaxy Network, and furthermore, taken as disciple by the Holy Land. What a kick-ass life. Lu Fang smirked coldly and completely ignored Zhao Kuan. He said calmly, "You guys want to enter as well? Haha. What a joke. Two country bumpkins that came from who knows where." This was more or less the territory of the Donglin Imperial clan, so he didn't make a move. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to not giving any face to the Imperial clan. He would not dare to have this blame fall on himself. In any case, he had already decided that the moment the true dragon abyss opened, the first thing he would do would be to kill these two people. It didn't matter if he waited for a few more days. He still had this bit of patience. Sigh, where does this feeling of superiority come from? Aren't you afraid of being slapped in the face? The large black dog shook his head. Pa! Right at this moment, a crisp sound was heard. Lu Fang had really sustained a slap, and the person who had slapped him was actually himself. "See, clan brother." Zhao Kuan couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Then he looked at the large black dog in horror. Was this guy a jinx? Lu Fang himself was also very confused. He looked blankly at his right hand. Just now, for some reason, his right hand had uncontrollably slapped his face without any warning. It was as if he had gone mad. However, what happened next was even more inconceivable. He actually stretched out a sinful hand and immediately pressed it between Zhao Kuan's legs. In fact, he even pinched it lightly. This time, the middle-aged core formation cultivator from the Donglin Imperial clan, who was hovering in midair, fell down forcefully. "Holy fuck! My eyes are hurting. I'm about to vomit." Zhao Kuan was also dumbfounded. What was going on? Why had he been grabbed? Furthermore, if this was a beauty, then even if outsiders had seen this, he would only be embarrassed for a while at most. But now it was a man, a man. All of a sudden, there was only one thought in his mind, and that was all his innocence was gone. Heavens, he didn't even want a beautiful woman. It was fine as long as they were women. Why was it a man? Lu Fang was also stunned and speechless. He swore that his sexual orientation was extremely normal, but all of a sudden, for some reason, he was touching a man's crotch. This made him practically doubt his life. Disgusting! Donglin Imperial clan's core formation tier finally roared. This was too fucking blinding. No, no, no. This is a misunderstanding, Lu Fang hurriedly said. He was really very innocent. However, just as his words fell, his demonic palm once again stretched out and pressed down on Zhao Kuan's behind. This shameless, shameless. The core formation tier cultivator's face flushed red, and he shouted, "All of you, get lost. You're not welcome here." "No, it's really not like that." Lu Fang's face was also pale. This banquet was a very good opportunity for him to get to know the other Holy Lands and even the Imperial clan, in fact, so he could expand his circle of friends. But if he was chased out of the banquet, then if others asked, what? He was chased off because he had touched another man's cock and behind? How would he be able to face others in future? If he truly became a saint in the future, would others also refer to him as the cock-touching saint? That would really be leaving his name for all eternity. He looked towards Zhao Kuan. Unexpectedly, Zhao Kuan had also retreated continuously, maintaining a great distance from him, a hint of wariness in his expression. "Zhao Kuan, even you don't trust me?" he asked angrily. Zhao Kuan smiled awkwardly, yet was unwilling to come any closer. "How am I supposed to believe you? You touched my cock first, then touched my behind. Pervert, pervert." The large black dog was already rolling around in laughter. As the culprit, he was naturally extremely pleased. Unfortunately, this kind of pleasure could only be shared with Ling Han. Otherwise, he would be even happier. Ling Han also shook his head. If this clay figurine was used properly, its might would really be even more terrifying than killing someone. Of course, only the large black dog would think of such an underhanded trick. This time, Lu Fang had really been tricked terribly. "Don't stand here anymore. Leave quickly." Donglin Imperial clan's core formation tier began to chase them away. He really didn't want to see Lu Fang again. He felt extremely disgusted. Lu Fang was naturally unwilling and was just explaining away. However, this was naturally useless. With 2 moves, his image had already been completely destroyed. Ha ha ha! The large black dog laughed heartily. What are you laughing at? Lu Fang looked over. He had finally found a target to vent his fury. What are you being so arrogant for? I didn't touch a man's cock or behind, the large black dog said in a mocking tone. Fuck, you still dare to say it. Lu Fang wanted to kill someone, but his reasoning was still present. This was the territory of the Donglin Imperial clan. Killing someone here was equivalent to not giving face to the Donglin Imperial clan. He was unafraid of this middle-aged man. He was only a servant, so his abilities were definitely inferior to his. However, if he offended the Donglin Imperial clan, would there still be a place for him in the future? He sneered as well and said, You speak as if you have the right to enter. The large black dog was proud, and he said, Little Han, let's pass the 3 stages. Ha ha! Lu Fang laughed coldly. He knew what the 3 tests set by the Donglin Imperial clan were. As he saw it, it was impossible to pass them. The difficulty was too high, and they would only be seeking their own humiliation. If you guys can pass 3 stages, I'll cut off my head and hand it over to you. The large black dog looked towards Ling Han. Little Han, this pervert seems to be looking down on us? Sigh. Have we both fallen to the extent of being looked down on by a pervert? Ling Han shook his head cooperatively. You too, Lu Fang said through gritted teeth. As long as these 2 people dared to enter the true dragon abyss, he would definitely find them and kill them. However, he did not say it out loud, fearing that Ling Han and the large black dog would become afraid and give up the idea of going to the true dragon abyss. This friend, bring us to pass the 3 stages, Ling Han said. The Donglin Imperial clan's core formation tier also knew that Ling Han and the large black dog weren't in the same group as Lu Fang after observing them for so long. This caused him to breathe a sigh of relief. Otherwise, just thinking about the demonic palm that had reached into the privates of a certain man caused goosebumps to rise all over his body. All right, he nodded. Just as he was about to bring Ling Han and the large black dog to pass the so-called 3 stages, he was taken aback. Then, he turned to Ling Han and asked, Dare I ask if your name is Ling Han? Or Ding Yi? That's right. This is the second handsome man in the world, Ding Yi. I am the most handsome Ding heir in the world. The large black dog interrupted. The core formation tier cultivator nodded, then said, Please wait for a moment. What was going on here? Lu Fang was stunned. Why didn't you pass 3 stages? Could it be that you fucking wanted to cover for these 2 people and just bring the 2 of them to the banquet like that? This was too brazen. What had that person just said? Ling Han? Was this Ling Han from the North Heavenly Realm? That's not right. The difference in appearance was too great. Brother-in-law. A delicate voice was soon heard, and they saw a silver-haired little Lolita rapidly rushing over from the distance at an astonishing speed. This was naturally transmission of divine sense. The transmission of sound was far from being as fast as her running speed. Qi Mengshan. When the core formation tier cultivator heard the words brother-in-law, he was so scared that he directly fell over. Brother-in-law? This little princess only had one sister, and that was the imperial daughter of the Donglin Imperial clan. She was the imperial daughter of the Donglin Imperial clan, and she was also the prodigy with the most natural talent in the last million years, Qi Menghan. In the future, not only would she have the chance to become a saint, she could even attempt to become an emperor. The imperial daughter was getting married? Heavens! Lu Fang naturally knew Qi Mengshan as well. This was the little princess of the Donglin Imperial clan, and the imperial daughter Qi Menghan's younger sister. Which of the guests here today didn't know her? It was precisely because of this that he was gaping widely, looking at Ling Han as if he was an idiot. How was this possible? Qi Menghan was not only the imperial daughter, but also the 3rd most beautiful woman in the galaxy. Yet she was already taken? Moreover, she was already married to the person he hated the most? No, he could not accept this. The silver-haired Lolita didn't care how many people would be troubled by her screams. Her mind was filled with thoughts of marrying Qi Menghan off, and she didn't care at all. Brother-in-law, you're really late, she complained the moment she arrived. Then, she grabbed one of Ling Han's hands. Quick, quick, quick. Don't let others snatch big sister away. Sai, you're really too much. You're not worried at all that your wife is about to be snatched away. Aren't you afraid that there's a grassy plain above your head? This little girl was too mature, wasn't she? The large black dog's interest was instantly piqued, and he said, Little girl, tell me about your sister and little Han. Stinky dog. Qi Mengshan fanned her nose. I don't like dogs. They smell like poop all the time. So detestable. The large black dog's expression instantly turned dark. From the moment it gained intelligence, it had cast off most of its habits as a dog, all right? Let's go, let's go. With Qi Mengshan leading the way, of course, no one dared to stop them. They didn't need to pass any 3 stages, and directly went to the banquet venue. Lu Fang watched as the 2 men and little girl disappeared, flames of fury bursting from his eyes. He naturally had designs on Qi Menghan as well. Though this imperial daughter had not revealed her true appearance, her figure was really perfect, and she was definitely a supreme beauty. Furthermore, just from looking at Qi Mengshan, he knew that her big sister was naturally as beautiful as a celestial maiden. Whether you are Ding Yi or Ling Han, as long as you dare to enter into the true dragon abyss, I will definitely make it so that you will never return, he said balefully in his heart. As for the near-invincible legend of Ling Han, he naturally scoffed. He was merely in the late stage of the core formation tier, so how powerful could he be? Meanwhile, Zhao Kuan's expression was filled with envy. As it turned out, these 2 were the real awesome people. Without a sound, they had successfully courted the imperial daughter. He had still been showing off in front of the 2 of them. Now that he thought about it, it was too embarrassing. He swept an eye over Lu Fang, and involuntarily, his ass tightened. This distant clan brother of his had a special fetish. Would he? Instantly, he broke out in a cold sweat. Lu Fang discovered his strange behaviors, and hurriedly emphasized, I am not a pervert. Yes, yes, yes. Zhao Kuan nodded. Then why did you still grab my dick? And even touch my behind? It was clear that you were interested in my ass. Lu Fang, led by Qi Mengshan, Ling Han and the large black dog soon arrived at the banquet venue. It was located on the lake, and there were rocks floating on the water. There was a table placed on each floating rock. It was either for 1 person alone, or 3 to 4 people sitting together. At the center of the lake, there was a waterfall that fell from the sky and rushed into the lake, creating splashes that were at least a few meters tall. Hua, hua, hua. Hua sounds were deafening. However, for all the prodigies of the core formation tier here, this was naturally no big deal, and would not cause any kind of effects to their hearing at all. The imperial clan truly lived up to their name. They were still so unique in how they hosted a banquet. This was unlike other clans, which were either in the garden or in the palace. They were all on solid ground. The banquet was placed on the surface of the water here, which was indeed a sight to behold. Sister, sister, Qi Mengshan shouted loudly. Look, who have I brought here? As she said this, she turned to Ling Han and said, Hurry up and return to your original appearance. Fine. Ling Han sighed upon seeing this. This little lowly had a strong demeanor, and she was even ordering him around. Forget it. Since he was already here, he was unafraid. In the territory of the imperial clan, who would dare make a move? Ling Han returned to his original appearance, and the large black dog had long since grown tired of his human appearance. With a shake of his body, he also returned to his original form. A pair of iron underwear shone brightly, capable of blinding one's eyes. Ling Han. Immediately, someone recognized him and exclaimed in shock. Recently, Ling Han was really too popular. With the cultivation level of core formation tier, he had destroyed a true self tier. There were really pitifully few people who didn't know about him on the Galaxy network. A man's name was like the shadow of a tree. Regardless of whether Ling Han had borrowed the power of formations, he did indeed have the ability to crush a true self-tier cultivator, which was incredibly stunning. Of course, there were also those who were unconvinced by Ling Han and thought that since he could not communicate with the ley lines in the true dragon abyss, Ling Han was still an ordinary core formation tier cultivator, so what need was there for them to be afraid of him? Meanwhile, Qi Menghan's pretty face changed drastically. She hurriedly transmitted a message to Qi Mengshan, saying, "Don't spout nonsense. If this little girl shouted in public, then it would be a big joke. Sister, I've brought my brother-in-law." The little lowly's face was filled with innocence. Those who weren't familiar with her would definitely be deceived by her. Hiss, brother-in-law. Instantly a dead silence fell. No one spoke anymore. They looked towards Qi Menghan, then turned back to look at Ling Han. Hua, hua, hua. Only the waterfall continued to flow downwards. Mengshan, don't shoot your mouth off. An old woman ran out and grabbed Qi Mengshan by the neck. Then, she smiled at everyone. Children don't know any better. Young friends, you don't have to take it to heart. That's right, senior. Heh, she's only a child after all. Senior, you don't have to reprimand her too much. Only then did everyone come back to their senses, and spoke one after another. Qi Mengshan struggled continuously, but it would really be strange if she managed to break free. Furthermore, she still wanted to speak, but discovered that she could not open her mouth at all. She was sealed off by the power of regulations, as if she did not have a mouth. Young friends, find a place to sit, the old woman said to Ling Han and the large black dog. Then, she turned around and left with Qi Mengshan in tow. She was probably going to teach this mischievous brat a good lesson. Ling Han and the large black dog found an empty floating rock and jumped onto it. They then poured some wine for themselves. Good wine. The large black dog took a sip and couldn't help but widen his brows. The Donglin Imperial clan is truly rich and imposing. This wine was brewed from a considerable amount of celestial medicine. If it can be ingested continuously, it would be of great help to the comprehension of regulations. Drink more, Ling Han said with a smile. Definitely. The people at the other tables all had small sips of wine. Even if they knew that this wine was very nutritious, for the sake of their image, they still restrained themselves very much. However, how could Ling Han and the large black dog be the type to care about vanity? They drank like bulls and soon finished the whole pot of wine. The large black dog immediately picked up the empty wine pot and called out loudly, "Waiter, fill it up, bring it up." This caused the other prodigies to feel extremely disdainful. You guys want to be shameless? This banquet was hosted by the Imperial clan, and there was even the Imperial son attending. Galaxy Network's top 100 prodigies, as well as some Holy Land's Dao Child and Holy Daughter, who kept an extremely low profile yet were very powerful, were the only ones qualified to attend. How did the two of you gluttons appear? What are you looking at? I didn't eat your food. The large black dog glared back at him. Who was afraid of who? It wasn't long before an attendant came over and fetched a new pot of wine for Ling Han and the large black dog. He then brought the empty pot away with him. However, with Ling Han and the large black dog's shameless drinking, how long could this pot of wine last? Very soon it was empty again. "Waiter, serve the wine," the large black dog called out again. Then he said to Ling Han, "Little Han, Grandpa Dog tells you, why don't you really become the son-in-law of the Donglin Imperial clan? Then we'll have such fine wine to drink every day." When these words fell, not only did the members of the Donglin Imperial clan all have dark expressions, all the prodigies present also wanted to kill it and make it into a dog meat feast. Did he think that he could become the son-in-law of the Imperial clan just because he wanted to? He was really too shameless. A horse really doesn't know its face, someone humphed coldly. As his eyes swept over, a cold light actually flickered, exuding a terrifying aura, as if it wanted to crush the heavens. Ling Han stretched out a hand to parry. This cold light was destroyed by him, but his heart also clenched. This attack was extremely terrifying. More importantly, the other party had only cast a glance, and the might was already so terrifying. His true strength was naturally even more extraordinary. Ling Han turned to look at the person who had moved. That was a young man. Though he was seated in a cross-legged position, he was like a dragon that had hibernated. The moment he moved, it would definitely shake the heavens and earth. Who the hell was this guy? Haha. He is too arrogant. He has finally provoked the Bailey Imperial Sun into making a move, someone said. The Bailey Imperial Sun? Realization dawned on Ling Han. The imperial clan with the surname Bailey was the descendant of the great Emperor Ziwei. That Ling Han or whatever, seeing our imperial son, come and kneel to pay your respects. On the floating rock that belonged to the Bailey Imperial Sun, there were a total of 3 people, but only the Bailey Imperial Sun was seated, while the other 2 were standing. However, the 2 people standing here also had terrifying auras. Vaguely, they could see regulations undulating on their bodies, but they were clearly only in the core formation tier. What did this signify? They had already touched the threshold of the true self tier, and could cross over at any time. The reason why they didn't break through was probably related to the opening of the true dragon abyss. That was because cultivators could only enter the area corresponding to their cultivation level. Thus, the early stage of the true self tier was definitely not as useful as the consummate level of the core formation tier. The large black dog flew into a thunderous rage. Someone actually dared to sneak attack him? Grandpa Dog was the true ancestor of screwing people over. It quietly took out the clay figure, then used its divine sense to lock onto Bailey Imperial Sun, and began to control him. However, the large black dog immediately looked surprised. That was because no matter how he fiddled with the clay figure, the Bailey Imperial Sun was still seated normally, and did not move in the slightest. The large black dog refused to give up, and locked his divine sense onto the person who was shouting. Then, with a wave of his clay figurine schwa, that person sent out a palm strike towards the Bailey Imperial Sun. If this was any other person, they would definitely be hit. Firstly, they would not be able to expect it at all, and secondly, the person who had attacked was also very powerful. Though he was a servant, his abilities were enough to rank in the top 100 of the galaxy network. However, how could an Imperial Sun be ordinary? To be bestowed the title of Imperial Sun, that symbolized an aptitude that was invincible among his peers. The Bailey Imperial Sun stretched out a hand to grab the servant's wrist. The servant was so scared that his face had turned green. Hurriedly, he explained, "Young master, it was not me." All of a sudden, he did not know how to explain at all. That was because he clearly had not wanted to do that. But his hand still slapped out disobediently, as if he had been possessed. The Bailey Imperial Sun nodded. "I know." His voice was filled with magnetism, as well as a powerful confidence that would make others believe in him. Even if the sky collapsed, he would still have a way to resolve it. The servant instantly breathed a sigh of relief, and was also filled with gratitude. But right at this moment, the other servant also delivered a slap, aimed directly at Bailey Imperial Sun. The Bailey Imperial Sun moved again, his other hand gripping onto the wrist of the second servant. Young master." The second servant was also scared silly, his voice trembling. This time, everyone could tell that something was off. If it was claimed that the first servant had had a moment of madness, that was still acceptable, but for 2 servants to be like this, that was really extremely strange. Right at this moment, the first servant took advantage of the situation and collapsed, leaning into the arms of the Bailey Imperial Sun. The large black dog giggled, and immediately changed his divine sense to lock onto his target. The other servant also fell softly and powerlessly into the arms of the Bailey Imperial Sun. Fuck! All of a sudden, everyone gritted their teeth. This was too blinding. Though the Bailey Imperial Sun had a steady temperament, and could be claimed to not frown even if the heavens collapsed in front of his eyes, his whole body was covered with goosebumps now. Hurriedly, with a wave of his hands, pong, pong, the 2 servants were both sent flying. Ha ha ha! The large black dog laughed loudly. He had finally vented his anger. The Bailey Imperial Sun stood up. Boom, a terrifying aura surged out. He was really very strong. He was clearly only a core formation tier martial artist, yet was exuding an aura that could shatter the heavens. Probably he could advance into true self tier at any time. How dare you? His baleful gaze was baleful as he looked at the large black dog. The large black dog spread out his paws. Why are you looking at Grandpa Dog like that? Grandpa Dog isn't gay. So don't have any inappropriate thoughts about Grandpa Dog. The destructive power of these words was too strong. It was practically enough to confirm the inappropriate love affair between the Bailey imperial son and his two servants. The Bailey imperial son was unmoved. Being able to become the imperial son, not only did he have excellent natural talent, his temperament was naturally capable of withstanding the test as well. How could he easily lose control? He asked calmly, "You should have some kind of treasure on you that can control the actions of others, right?" His deduction was accurate enough. The large black dog naturally wouldn't admit this, and he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're clearly having lewd thoughts in public, and you want to do that with your two servants. Yet, you're trying to turn the tables around on me. You must have used it on me before, but unfortunately, it is useless on me." Yet the Bailey imperial son was completely unconcerned about the large black dog's nonsense. "Your knowledge is too shallow. The imperial son has a similar treasure on him that can resist all negative effects. Fuck, no wonder it was ineffective against him. That must be a power of a great emperor." The large black dog's expression remained unchanged, and he continued to shake his head in denial. In any case, he wouldn't admit it unless he was caught red-handed. "All right, please calm down, imperial son of the Bailey clan." Qi Menghan spoke up. She was imperial daughter of the Donglin imperial clan, and also the instigator of this banquet. At this time, she naturally could not remain silent any longer, or a fight would immediately break out. The Bailey imperial son looked at Qi Menghan, and his expression immediately became incredibly gentle. "Since Menghan has said so, I naturally will not refuse. Hey, that is Grandpa Dog's sister-in-law. What are you trying to get close to her for?" The large black dog, however, was not afraid at all, and immediately shouted loudly. This time, the Bailey imperial son was finally angered. When one had reached his height, ordinary beauties were completely beneath his notice. No matter how beautiful they were, it was useless. They would only be slightly higher-level playthings. However, Qi Menghan was different. Not only was she beautiful, but her status and natural talent was not inferior to his either. Thus, from the first moment he saw Qi Menghan, he was already certain that this was the best candidate for his Dao partner. Just now, Qi Mengshan calling out brother-in-law was already enough to displease him, and now the large black dog was still bringing this up, which was something he could not tolerate. "Are you seeking death?" he said balefully. Boom! A terrifying aura surged, as if raging flames were burning. The large black dog did not cower in the slightest. Limited by his cultivation level, though he was no match for the imperial son, didn't he still have Ling Han? Hee. Your sore spot has been pierced, right? The large black dog laughed. This is not just Grandpa Dog spouting nonsense. Just now, the little girl from the Qi clan called Grandpa Dog's brother as brother-in-law. Everyone here heard clearly, right? Everyone remained silent and decided not to get involved in this messy situation. The Bailey imperial son finally couldn't bear it any longer and brazenly moved. Boom, he sent out a palm strike, which directly enlarged to about 30 meters in size, which descended down on Ling Han and the large black dog. Ling Han smiled faintly, and with a wave of his hand, the primal chaos divine lightning was shot out. This large hand was immediately sent backwards. The eyes of the Bailey imperial son turned cold. Blood was dripping from his right palm. That attack just now had already pierced his palm. Ling Han was also serious, as expected of the imperial son. This guy was very frightening. The primal chaos divine lightning could be claimed to be his ultimate move with the greatest destructive power, but it had merely caused his palm to split open and caused him to bleed a little. This battle prowess was truly terrifying. The area was once again completely silent, with only the loud crashing sound of the waterfall. The imperial son moved, and not only was he unsuccessful, he was even wounded. How could he believe this? Ling Han is truly heaven-defying. Bailey Che is a consummate level elite of the core formation tier, and he is also the imperial son. Yet he was actually wounded by Ling Han. This is unbelievable. Everyone was exclaiming in shock. Fuck. Who could believe such a result? Bailey Che, the Dao child of the Ziwei Imperial clan, was ranked second. The other was already in the spiritual transformation tier. He would enter another area of the True Dragon Abyss and participate in the battle for fortune of the spiritual transformation tier. Thus, from the point of view of core formation tier, Bailey Che should be top-notch. In this place, the only one that could rival him should be Qi Menghan. However, Ling Han had wounded Bailey Che with a single strike. He was even more impressive than the Imperial Sun. At this moment, everyone forgot to pursue the matter of the large black dog. What tricks had they used to make those two servants do such an eye-piercing thing? They were all paying attention to Ling Han. At present, he could be considered the most popular guy. Would he be able to defeat even the Imperial Sun? He didn't use formations, but his true strength. Good, very good, Bailey Che stated calmly. He raised his right hand, and there was a wound on the palm of his hand. Vaguely, the power of lightning could be seen boiling. But it could be seen that the power of lightning had been forcefully expelled, and then the wound began to rapidly heal. After so many years, there are already very few that can cause me injury, he said. There was not the slightest bit of anger in his voice. Instead, there was a hint of admiration. Then, as repayment for your kindness, I will use my strongest battle prowess and crush you into dust. Stop! Qi Menghan leaped out. She stood in the air, and with a slight breeze, the hem of her dress fluttered. It was clearly just a plain white dress, but it made her look like she was wearing something that could enchant millions of people. Both of you, please give me some face, she said calmly, but a terrifying aura surged out, ready to turn into a goddess of war at any time. Bailey Che hesitated slightly, then nodded and said, I naturally have to give Meng Han some face. Meanwhile, Ling Han made a judgment in his mind. Qi Menghan was stronger than this Bailey Che. True, Qi Menghan was the most outstanding successor of the Donglin Imperial clan. She was known as the strongest imperial daughter in millions of years. If she was only comparable to an ordinary imperial son, then she would really be letting down the word strongest. Ling Han smiled and sat down. Little Han, when the true dragon abyss opens, let's work together to kill him. The large black dog communicated through divine sense. All right, Ling Han nodded. He could tell that Bailey Che bore killing intent towards him. This was completely baffling. It should be known that they had not met at all before, but because of Qi Menghan, Bailey Che felt a strong killing intent towards him. Ling Han naturally wouldn't explain and say that in reality, he wasn't interested in Qi Menghan at all. This was equivalent to taking the initiative to show weakness, and did not match his character at all. Furthermore, he did not owe Bailey Che anything, so what need was there for him to explain? The banquet continued. Because the true dragon abyss was about to open, the main theme of this banquet naturally revolved around this. Everyone had reached a preliminary agreement on alliance, and wanted to work together in the true dragon abyss to overcome the difficulties together. It was said that the true dragon abyss was incredibly dangerous. Every time, only 1/10 of the people who entered would be able to come out. Moreover, no one could say why, because after exiting the true dragon abyss, the relevant memories would be severed, and would no longer exist. Thus, regarding the true dragon abyss, there were no strategies to study and make preparations in advance. They could only form more alliances, and if they encountered danger, they could also help each other. Overall, the banquet's atmosphere was quite harmonious. This place was filled with core formation tier elites, and after entering into the true dragon abyss, these people could be considered the strongest battle prowess. At midnight, the banquet ended. Ling Han and the large black dog were still unsatisfied. They had been drinking all this while. This was something very nutritious, so they naturally drank as much as they could. The others were not as shameless as them, and now it was too late for regrets. Bailey Che left with his two servants. Before he left, he glanced at Ling Han, his eyes cold and filled with killing intent. Ling Han only smiled faintly. So what if he was the imperial son? What did he have to fear now? When they returned to their residence, Hunyo hurriedly asked about what had happened at the banquet, and couldn't help but pout. That little lowly was really too shameless. to actually dare to help her sister snatch Nyo's Ling Han. Ling Han wanted to hand the clay figurine over to the two women to use, but after some thought, with their present cultivation level of 9 cauldrons fusion cauldron, even Galaxy Network's number 1 cauldron forging tier was far from being their match. And if they encountered Imperial Son or Imperial Daughter, the clay figurine would be ineffective. Unfortunately, I should have asked Qi Menghan about this. He felt slightly regretful. Isn't it the same to call that little lowly out for questioning? The large black dog came up with an idea. Why don't you just marry the two sisters, so that that little lowly would not bring disaster to others? Get lost. Day after day passed, and more people came here. According to statistics, even at least 7 imperial clans came, and there were people that Ling Han knew among them. Lin Lang was the imperial son of the Fire Cloud Imperial Clan, ranked 3rd. Previously, he had lost to Ling Han, and now he had advanced into the core formation tier. Furthermore, he had reached the consummate level of the core formation tier. The moment he arrived, he began to shout, wanting to fight another battle with Ling Han. Ling Han completely ignored him. This kind of battle was completely meaningless. Was he going to fight for others' entertainment? A whole 3 months had passed, and that crack on the heavenly dragon planet was getting larger and larger, already swallowing the whole planet. Everyone had no choice but to leave the heavenly dragon planet and float in midair. As this rip expanded, there was a frightening power of heaven and earth and regulations circulating within. Even saints would feel fear and not dare to oppose it. Finally, not only did this rip swallow the entire heavenly dragon planet, it even spread out into the galaxy, turning this galaxy into a massive rip, and even the sun was swallowed within. After the sunlight completely disappeared, a saint spoke up, "The true dragon abyss has completely opened, and we can enter now." Instantly, everyone threw themselves into it. Ling Han bid farewell to the Empress and Hu Nyo, reminding them to be careful. "Don't worry, Nyo is very strong now." Hu Nyo raised her arm, making a strong gesture. "Nyo will protect this proud Empress." She pointed at the Empress. The Empress swept a proud glance at her, but did not speak. Ling Han laughed loudly. "Let's go." The 3 people and 1 dog also soared into the abyss. As they flew, Ling Han discovered that the Empress and Hu Nyo had disappeared at some point in time. At different cultivation levels, they would enter the corresponding area, and definitely would not be together. Though Ling Han was a little worried, he was still filled with confidence in the strength of the Empress and Hu Nyo. He pulled himself together, and using the imminent skyline, he sped up with the large black dog. This was a dark space, a complete void, and nothing could be seen. Flying like this, flying for a whole half-month's time, light finally appeared ahead of them. Ling Han and the large black dog exchanged looks, and saw that they had actually flown above a great ocean. There was a sun hanging high in the skies, and it was unknown whether it was the one that had been swallowed by the abyss previously. "Not good," the man and dog both exclaimed in shock, their figures rapidly falling. Tong! Tong! 2 splashes of water spread out, and Ling Han and the large black dog were seen to have both fallen into the great ocean. "What's going on?" the large black dog shouted. He was presently doing a dog paddle floating in the sea. Ling Han frowned and said, "The regulations of heaven and earth here suddenly changed, preventing us from flying." They were still unable to cultivate the regulations, but used the regulations of heaven and earth at all times. But now that the regulations of heaven and earth here had suddenly changed, they could no longer fly. "Then if you want to fly, you would first have to get used to the regulations of heaven and earth of this place," the large black dog said. Ling Han nodded. "But it is also possible that the regulations here cannot allow flight at all." The large black dog was slightly gloomy, and he said, "After becoming accustomed to flying, it's truly awkward to walk on 2 legs now." Don't you use 4 legs?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Woof! I'll bite you to death." The large black dog opened its mouth to bite Ling Han. Ling Han clapped his hands on the surface of the water, and his whole person flew up. Then, his feet stepped on the surface of the sea, as he rapidly raced forwards. The large black dog also jumped onto the water's surface, continuing to chase after Ling Han. Though they could not fly, the slight tension on the surface of the water was enough to support their running. In this manner, after running for more than an hour, mainland appeared ahead of them. No, this was a very large island. Ling Han let out a sharp hiss. He had just returned from that strange sea of blood not too long ago, so why had he come to a similar place? Thankfully, this was not the sea of blood. Otherwise, he would really be traumatized. Speaking of which, why was there no follow-up to that matter? Had the great imperial clans teamed up to venture into that sea of blood? Who was that mysterious red-haired beauty? And which ancestral king had created this place? He was slightly anticipating meeting Qi Menghan. She was the imperial daughter, so she should know a lot of secrets. "Little Han, are you thinking about some woman?" the large black dog asked. Hee. Don't deny it. Just look at the expression on your face. If you're thinking about a man now, Grandpa Dog will have to worry. The large black dog paused and said with a mischievous smile, "Is it that little girl from the Qi clan? Fine, you're smart." Ling Han ignored him. Otherwise, the large black dog would pursue him relentlessly, and there would be no end to it. It wasn't long before they reached the island. "Let's see if there are any natives here first," Ling Han said. As they spoke, a considerable number of people arrived on the island. Previously, when the True Dragon Abyss had opened, thousands of people had entered. Furthermore, there was no crossroads here. This island was the only destination. Some people nodded at each other, while others revealed vicious expressions, their killing intent faintly discernible. It should be known that after leaving this place, everyone's memories would be erased, and they would not remember their encounters here. Thus, no matter what they did here, there was no need for them to have any reservations. To say nothing of the fact that no one would remember, even they themselves would forget, and it would not leave behind any internal demons. Thus, they could completely abandon everything else here and start a massacre. "Ling Han!" A cold voice rang out, and Lu Fang quickly arrived. He stared at Ling Han, his eyes exuding a biting, killing intent. The large black dog stood up on his hind legs and shook his head. "You are the dumbest fool that Grandpa Dog has ever seen, to actually come so rashly to your death." "Ha! What an unfunny joke," Lu Fang said coldly. "You guys are really bold. You clearly know that I will also enter into the True Dragon Abyss, yet still dare to come at the first instant. Just because you guys didn't make me wait any longer, I will let you die a faster death." The large black dog scratched his head and looked towards Ling Han. "This guy stole our lines, what do we do?" "Then don't be so pretentious, and just fight," Ling Han said with a smile. "That's a good idea," the large black dog said with a nod. Lu Fang strode over, saying, "You won't give up until you're faced with the grim reality. You've changed my mind. I'm going to execute you inch by inch." The large black dog snickered. "Grandpa Dog will make a bet with you. Even if Grandpa Dog is standing here, don't even think of touching a single hair of Grandpa Dog." Lu Fang didn't even bother to reply. He was one of the top 100 cultivators in core formation tier on the Galaxy Network. He could suppress a large black dog who was in the early stage of the core formation tier with a wave of his hand. He strode over. For this day, he had also waited for a very long time. However, he had just walked out 6 steps, and when the 7th step landed, he staggered, his whole person slanting slightly. He was a core formation tier consummate level being, and he actually stumbled as he walked. What kind of strange thing was this? The people in the surroundings were also surprised. What was going on? To say nothing of the high-ranking prodigies of the Galaxy Network, even ordinary celestial path cultivators wouldn't be able to walk unsteadily. Pa! A crisp slap rang out, and Lu Fang actually slapped himself. Why are you hitting yourself?" The large black dog pretended to be surprised. Grandpa Dog knows. You know your mistake. Fine, you can correct your behavior after knowing your mistake so you can still be saved. Come, kneel and kowtow." Pa, when his words fell, Lu Fang really knelt down. Fuck, what was going on? All of a sudden, everyone was incredibly stunned. What was going on here? Could it be that it was Lu Fang that had really admitted defeat? But if that was the case, why would he take the initiative to provoke them? Both sides clearly hadn't faced each other head-on, so why had he cowered? Lu Fang himself was also very confused. What was going on? Why did his arms and legs suddenly not listen to him? This was too fucking strange. He suddenly recalled that when he had gone to the banquet hosted by the Donglin Imperial clan, he had also suddenly lost control. He had actually touched a man's dick and behind. That was truly embarrassing. Afterwards, he couldn't understand what was going on no matter what, but now, his body was out of control again. Furthermore, both times had been because he had come into conflict with Ling Han and the large black dog. If this was a coincidence, it was definitely impossible. So it was you people behind this, he shouted angrily, his eyes almost spitting fire. To him, touching another man's private parts was like a nightmare. Recently, this scene would appear every time he closed his eyes. It had already become an internal demon in his heart. Now, he finally knew that all of this was because of Ling Han and the large black dog. How could he not be furious? However, with this thought in mind, a cold chill rose up in his heart. Just look, he didn't even need to make a move, and he was already toying around with him. If he really wanted to kill him, and directly controlled him to shatter his mind with a single palm strike, wouldn't he be dead? With this in mind, he naturally thought of retreating. It would be better not to take revenge. He suddenly turned around and fled. Grandson, didn't you just say that you wanted to admit your mistake? Why are you running? The large black dog snickered and twisted the clay figurine. Lu Fang instantly fell down solidly and then rolled all over the ground. Under the control of the clay figurine, Lu Fang was like a marionette, unable to resist at all. However, after playing for a few minutes, the large black dog suddenly let out a surprised exclamation. Lu Fang could no longer be controlled. What was going on here? The large black dog looked towards Ling Han and communicated briefly through divine sense. Ling Han frowned upon hearing this. This hadn't appeared during their previous tests. If it's targeted at one person, there should be a time limit, Ling Han said slowly after some thought. The large black dog nodded in agreement. The clay figurine wasn't a deadly weapon, and this was clear from the fact that it couldn't control people to commit suicide. It was more like a toy. Sigh. This isn't fun enough. Couldn't help but feel disappointed. That's about enough. Can't you see that he's almost about to be killed by you? Ling Han said with a smile. The large black dog snickered, looking extremely despicable. On the other side, Lu Fang also discovered that the other's control over himself had disappeared. This was very difficult to explain, but he knew that this kind of control would not appear again on him in the short term. Instantly, his killing intent surged madly. It should be known that he had originally come to seek out Ling Han and the large black dog for an accounting, but he had been tricked before he had even made a move. That was why he had the thought of fleeing. But now that the control had disappeared, what was the point of running? Revenge. Furthermore, he still had to snatch that controlling treasure. That was a treasure, and with such a thing in hand, how could he possibly still be in the top 100 of the Galaxy network? Instead, he would be the #1 elite of the core formation tier. The two of you. Lu Fang walked over step by step, his expression cold. How do you want to die? The large black dog shook his head. Grandpa Dog is still alive and well, and has no intention of dying. What about you, little Han? Neither do I, Ling Han said with a smile. Seeing that this man and dog still dared to tease him at this moment, Lu Fang was naturally even more enraged. Boom! A terrifying aura surged out of his body. Vaguely, one could see divine light intertwining, flickering with multiple shattered seals. He was at the consummate level of the core formation tier, and was just a sliver away from advancing into the true self tier. For prodigies like this, after arriving at the end of the cultivation level of a major tier, they usually wouldn't be in a rush to step out. Firstly, they wanted to stabilize themselves and cultivate their cultivation level to perfection. This was always easier than turning back later. Secondly, it was also for the sake of obtaining great opportunities, because there were too many ancient sites and mystery realms that had restrictions on cultivation level. Then, at the same cultivation level, such as the core formation tier, how could early stage be compared with the consummate level? Thus, Lu Fang actually could already advance into the true self tier. However, for the two reasons mentioned above, he stopped at the consummate level of the core formation tier. After several decades of hard cultivation, his battle prowess was naturally tempered to an incredibly powerful level. The large black dog immediately cowered and said, "Little Han, you go." It was the early stage of the core formation tier, so it was completely no match. Seeing it cower, Lu Fang laughed loudly. This was the scene that he was most familiar with. With the move of a supreme prodigy ranked in the top 100 of the Galaxy network, who wouldn't be scared out of their wits? It doesn't matter who attacks. You both will die, he said balefully. Ling Han shrugged and said with a smile, I don't believe it. You will soon believe me. Lu Fang moved. Boom, endless power exploded, charging towards Ling Han. Ling Han was unperturbed. He was presently communicating with the ley lines, but he shockingly discovered that these ley lines seemed to be sleeping and did not listen to his commands at all. He could no longer use the ability of formations. Forget it, it wasn't a big deal. In any case, this place had restrictions on cultivation level, and only those at the core formation tier could enter, and among those at the core formation tier, it was possible that he still wouldn't be able to defeat an imperial son and imperial daughter who were limited in number, but it was also impossible to wound or even kill him. Die! Lu Fang had already charged over and delivered a palm strike directly at the top of Ling Han's head, intending to shatter his mind in a single stroke. He didn't hate Ling Han that much, so he only wanted to kill Ling Han. However, it was a completely different story for the large black dog. He would capture this despicable dog first, then slowly torture him to death. Only then did Ling Han move, aiming for Lu Fang's throat. It was clear that his attack was going to be slow, but this attack had started later, yet reached first. Under Lu Fang's incredibly stunned gaze, he felt his throat tighten. He had already been detained by Ling Han. What kind of gap in strength was this? No. He must still be under the control of that mysterious treasure. Otherwise, how could he possibly be so fragile that he could not even withstand a single move from the other? Ling Han did not hesitate at all. He directly exerted force with his 5 fingers, and then with a twist, Lu Fang's neck was forcefully broken, and under the barrage of destructive energy, Lu Fang's mind was also forcefully destroyed. He did not even have the chance to burn the celestial core to extend his life. Pa! Lu Fang collapsed onto the ground. His eyes were still wide open, completely in disbelief. He was the Tao child of the Azure Snow Holy Land, a supreme prodigy ranked in the top 100 of the Galaxy network, so how had he died in such an unclear manner? However, he was already dead, and everything had become meaningless. Ling Han was completely unconcerned. Putting aside the fact that this was one of the top 100 on the Galaxy network, he had even killed a Buddha son, so how could he possibly be concerned? Old Black, let's go. All right. The large black dog first searched Lu Fang's body, and after taking away the spatial spirit tool, he giggled and followed in Ling Han's footsteps. The people in the surroundings watched, all stunned and solemn. Ling Han was indeed as powerful as the legend said. He had killed Lu Fang, who was ranked in the top 100 of the Galaxy network, with a single move, and he had killed him just like that. This was also a reminder to everyone that this was the true Dragon Abyss, which was incredibly cruel. In any case, everyone's memories would be erased after they left. No matter how outstanding a prodigy was, they would only be able to vaguely remember a little bit of things. Thus, in this place, everyone could release the desires in their hearts and do things that they would not dare to do normally. There were no moral restrictions here, nor were there any threats from clansmen or masters. It was completely dependent on one's abilities. If one was strong enough, he could do as he liked. Ling Han and the large black dog walked for a while, and they discovered a town. It was not very big and only had over 1,000 houses. The number of townspeople could not possibly exceed 10,000 at most. They asked around, but they didn't expect the townspeople here to be so cordial, not rejecting outsiders like them at all. They said whatever they wanted, not hiding anything at all. This place was called the Start Point Town. From here, after passing through 9 islands, one would be able to reach the finishing point town. However, this wasn't something that could be accomplished just by running from the start point town to the finishing point town. One definitely had to pass through the 9 islands, and they also had to take a legendary fragment from each island. The 9 fragments could be combined into a key to open the door to the finishing point town. Moreover, if one wanted to cross the sea, they would have to use a ship. The crew of each ship could form a team, and this was a team-based way of traversing the sea. In other words, a team could share a key. This was not a benefit, but rather a rigid rule. Furthermore, the size of the team had to be as many as 5 people, and at most it could not exceed 10 people. If this requirement was not met, the residents of the 9 islands would not give up the legendary fragment. Ling Han and the large black dog exchanged looks. Which guy had come up with this? He was really too good at torturing people, wasn't he? Then, the first step is to first form a team? The large black dog asked. We can only do that, Ling Han said with a nod. Who are we looking for? Let's wait and see. I'm sure everyone will come to this town. Sure enough, this was the only town on the island. Thus, most people would treat this place as their first stop. Of course, there were also some impatient people who directly crossed the sea. According to the people of Start Point Town, this wouldn't work. There were incredibly terrifying wild beasts in the sea, and they could easily capsize large ships. Eating humans would be a piece of cake. Not long after, Ling Han saw one of the team members that he was looking for. Sister-in-law. The large black dog was the first to call out, and charged out enthusiastically. Qi Menghan arrived. This imperial daughter wasn't alone. There was another man beside her, and just standing there. It was as if the space itself couldn't bear his strength and was trembling. Bailey Che. Of course, there was also a silver-haired little Lolita. It was Qi Mengshan. This little girl's natural talent in martial arts was really amazing. She was obviously only in her teens, but she was already in the early stage of core formation tier, as expected of the imperial clan's bloodline. Aside from that, the 2 servants of Bailey Che were also present. Despicable dog. What nonsense are you spouting? Bailey Che immediately rebuked, his eyes as sharp as blades. Grandpa Dog is talking to sister-in-law, so why are you interrupting? The large black dog didn't back down in the slightest. Bailey Che had already been filled with killing intent toward Ling Han and the large black dog. However, Qi Menghan had forcefully suppressed his killing intent previously, and now that the large black dog was provoking him again, he naturally couldn't tolerate it any longer. How dare you? The 2 servants immediately charged out, pouncing towards the large black dog. Che! Grandpa Dog is still unable to deal with the 2 of you? The large black dog laughed sinisterly, and did not avoid the issue either. He took out the clay figurine and began to knead it. Pong, pong, pong. The 2 servants began fighting with each other. One would throw a punch and the other would counter with a kick, and the battle was incredibly intense. In any case, the imperial son had a treasure to protect him, so he wouldn't be controlled by the clay figurine. Once they left, everyone's memories would be erased. Thus, the large black dog didn't mind revealing the secret of the clay figurine at all. Seeing this scene, Bailey Che couldn't help but look furious. Though these were only 2 servants, he had also lost face. Qi Mengshan's interest was piqued, and she said, "Shitty dog. Let me play with the clay figurine." How could the large black dog be willing to do that? He was the type to screw others over. If a treasure fell into his hands, there would basically be no returning the treasure. How could he be willing to lend a treasure to another? It hurriedly put away the clay figure, looking very careful, fearing that Qi Mengshan would snatch it from it. With this control gone, the 2 servants instantly fell to the ground, panting endlessly. Stingy! Qi Mengshan humphed and pouted. Meanwhile, Ling Han was slightly surprised. Did people of the imperial clan all grow especially slowly? Previously, this little loli looked to be 10 or 11 years old, and now 2 years had already passed, so why was she still like this? Die! At this moment, Bailey Che finally couldn't hold himself back any longer and lashed out with his fist. Boom! It was as if even the heavens were about to be blasted apart. His might was as terrifying as could be. Ling Han naturally wouldn't allow the large black dog to fight. He leaped forward and clashed with Bailey Che. Pong! In this exchange of blows, Ling Han was instantly sent backwards. However, with the primal chaos celestial core being able to disperse the impact, he was naturally unscathed. Bailey Che's battle prowess was not 6 heavens stronger than Ling Han. Bailey Che frowned. Previously, he had indeed exchanged blows with Ling Han, and had suffered some injuries at that. However, he thought that Ling Han had used some kind of treasure, and Ling Han's true battle prowess definitely could not match the Imperial Sun. In this exchange of blows, it had proven his judgment. Ling Han's power was indeed inferior to his. However, Ling Han had used some unknown method to easily disperse the power that he had been hit with. Was this another treasure? Bailey Che was a little jealous. First, it was the clay figurine, then it was the treasure that had wounded his hand, and now added with this treasure that could neutralize power. Just how many good things had this guy grasped? In fact, his wealth was even richer than his. Which of them was the Imperial Sun? However, there was a limit to how many treasures could be used. Even the Imperial weapon couldn't unleash its full might all the time. Die! He charged over again. This casual move was a brilliant move, possessing boundless might. Ling Han was unafraid as he charged forward. He channeled the god-slaying technique, and his battle prowess was also incredibly powerful. Boom! The two supreme prodigies battled fiercely, causing everyone to frown. Their divine senses were ensnared. These two people were too powerful. If they faced them head-on, they wouldn't even be able to withstand a single blow. Next, were they going to compete with this kind of prodigy? A great many people shook their heads. How could there possibly be any hope of victory? Hong! 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 Because they couldn't fly, the two of them could only battle on the ground. However, the ground here was extraordinarily firm. The fierce battle between the two core formation tiers actually didn't cause any damage, which also made people click their tongues in amazement. Bailey Che had been waiting all this while, waiting for the power-dissolving treasure in Ling Han's possession to reach its limit. However, it was clear that he could not possibly reach the end of his wait, because this was the might of Ling Han's primal chaos celestial core, and had absolutely nothing to do with any kind of treasure. Thus, though the battle was fierce, it was actually very boring. It was a situation wherein neither one could hurt the other. After a battle, Qi Menghan stepped out to mediate, stopping the two of them. Bailey Che naturally had to give Qi Menghan some face. Moreover, Qi Menghan's battle prowess was even more terrifying than his. If he didn't give her face, it definitely wasn't a good idea. He stood still, his eyes slightly dark. As the Imperial Sun, there was actually someone that he could not kill, which made him extremely displeased. Little girl, are you interested in forming a team with us? The large black dog was already trying to bewitch her. His target was Qi Mengshan. As long as the little girl agreed, would Qi Menghan be able to escape? This was the Imperial daughter, and her battle prowess was incredibly terrifying. It was definitely best for her to be a teammate. You let me play with the clay figurine. The silver-haired little Lolita took the chance to bargain. A pained expression instantly appeared on the large black dog's face. He was afraid that if it would be like throwing a meat bun at a dog. He had spoken wrongly. Ling Han smiled and said to Qi Menghan, "There's a need to form teams to compete here. One team needs at least 5 people. How about it? If we form a team, we need only one more person to have a full team." What? Bailey Che's eyes involuntarily turned cold. One more person? You actually didn't take me into account? Humph, but would Qi Menghan agree? You are only an unorthodox cultivator, so how could the Imperial daughter possibly fall for you? Bailey Che was filled with confidence. Though Ling Han was indeed freakish, his background was too poor, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not compare to him. Qi Menghan pondered for a moment before replying, "Sure. Who?" Bailey Che instantly spluttered. Hey, you are the Imperial daughter, and you actually teamed up with such lowly commoners? Sister, you're too unfriendly. Qi Mengshan was extremely displeased and said, "I was just about to scam them out of the clay figurine. Yet now that you've agreed, this damn dog is acting shameless again." Meanwhile, the large black dog was greatly shocked. This little lowly was indeed trying to cheat him out of his treasure. He really couldn't underestimate her. She was clearly so innocent and cute. Menghan, Bailey Che hurriedly spoke up. Let's form a team, and there just happened to be 5 of us. Chi Menghan smiled faintly at him and said, Brother Bailey, please refer to me by my full name. I'm not that familiar with you. With these words, Bailey Che's expression instantly darkened. In fact, a hint of malevolence even appeared on his face. Chi Menghan would give Bailey Che some face. After all, Bailey Che was from the Ziwei Imperial clan. However, she didn't have any desires for Bailey Che, so if she didn't have any desires, she was naturally firm. There was absolutely no need for her to feel aggrieved for his sake. From her point of view, the help that Ling Han could give her was superior to Bailey Che. Furthermore, they had fought side by side before, so how could the friendship that they had cultivated in battle be something that Bailey Che could catch up to with just a few words of flattery from him? Bailey Che's expression was livid. He very much wanted to step out and fight, but just Ling Han alone was enough to give him a headache. What more when there was Chi Menghan whose battle prowess was superior to his? That would really be seeking his own humiliation. Fine, there was still a chance anyways. He would definitely kill Ling Han. After leaving this place, everyone's memories would be erased. Even top-notch prodigies would only retain a vague memory. Thus, he had absolutely no need to worry about offending Chi Menghan. After leaving this place, he would just have to come back again. Celestial Maiden Chi, I hope you won't regret this, he said with a humph. With a wave of his hand, he left with his 2 servants. It would take at least 5 people to form a team here, so he had to recruit people first. Moreover, since they were participating in the competition as a team, there was definitely a need to be particular. Thus, the team members had to be carefully selected. They could not be careless. All right, find another person, and we can set out. Ling Han had the large black dog go by a ship, while he and Chi Menghan and her sister stayed behind to continue recruiting people. Senior Brother Ling. A voice filled with pleasant surprise rang out, and a dazzling beauty was presently walking towards them. This woman was truly beautiful. Grace filled her every step, and could drive anyone crazy. Song Lan, the seductive beauty, ranked 9th on the exquisite leaderboard. Ling Han smiled and said, You also came. That's right. Song Lan nodded, her smile blossoming like a flower. With how exquisitely beautiful she was, how could she possibly be alone? For example, Lu Qi had always been by her side, as well as some other suitors. She was the 9th most beautiful woman in the galaxy, and even an imperial son would be moved by her. However, seeing their beloved goddess show such a dazzling smile to another man, this caused everyone to feel incredibly hurt. Damn it! Lu Qi clenched his fists tightly, wanting nothing more than to move and kill Ling Han. However, he naturally knew that he was no match for Ling Han. That guy was a freak. To say nothing of him, even an imperial son could not possibly deal with him. Needless to say, he was still very self-aware. Just now, there was an imperial son that had been forced to retreat. Chi Mengshan leaned close to her sister's ear and said, Sister, you have a rival now. Hurry up and sleep with brother-in-law, or else brother-in-law will be snatched away. This little Lolita simply wished for the whole world to be in chaos. These words were not lowered in the slightest, so everyone in the surroundings could hear them clearly. Chi Menghan was indeed so furious that she wanted to beat someone up. Song Lan's pretty face was also flushed red, and Lu Qi and the others were all glaring at her in anger. Who was this little girl? Did she know how to talk properly? Chi Mengshan wasn't afraid of anyone, and she glared back at them, asking, What's wrong? Do you want to fight? Seeing that a few people had taken a step forwards, the little lowly immediately pounced towards Ling Han. Brother-in-law, save me. Someone is trying to harm the cute, beautiful, and enchanting Mengshan. Everyone was speechless. You call yourself cute? Little devil. Senior Brother Ling, are you still short of people in your team? Song Lan asked. Ling Han didn't mind this. Combined with Chi Menghan, he should be able to sweep aside all opposition, right? He nodded, then looked at Chi Menghan and said, I have no objections. What do you think? Sister, don't agree. This is a love rival. Qi Mengshan hurriedly said from the sidelines. Qi Menghan didn't know Song Lan very well. At first, she could have refused, but after hearing her sister's words, it wasn't appropriate for her to refuse. Otherwise, wouldn't this really become the rejection towards a love rival? Sure, Qi Menghan said with a smile. I've also admired little sister Song for a long time. Speaking of which, the two women were both ranked in the top 10 of the exquisite leaderboard, though they had never met before. Fuck! It was settled. When Lu Kai and the others saw this, it was as if a bottle of mixed feelings had been knocked over in their hearts. They were all feeling very depressed. Ling Han looked towards Lu Qi and showed a hint of killing intent. Were you the one who hired the assassin from Battle God Palace? How could that be? Lu Qi immediately shook his head. Ling Han, I'm not afraid of you. However, as the disciple of a holy land, how could I possibly be related to the notorious assassin organization? Ling Han's expression became serious. You dare to insult me? What are you talking about? Why don't I understand? Lu Qi's mouth was half gaping. Where did this come from? You're taking things a bit too far, aren't you? Ling Han smiled and said, I forgot to mention that I'm also a seed of the Battle God Palace. Go! Lu Qi was stupefied. What was going on here? Was Ling Han a seed of the Battle God Palace? Then why did the Battle God Palace insist on killing him? No, Ling Han was definitely lying to him. You don't believe me? Ling Han took a step forwards, yet suddenly disappeared. Strange shadow steps. Qi Menghan clearly knew what was what, and immediately looked stunned. At the same time, she also felt a sense of foreboding. Could it be that Ling Han was really a disciple of the Battle God Palace? That would be terrifying. Ling Han was too freakish. Once he became the killing saint in an era when there were no emperors in the world, would there still be anyone that he could not assassinate? At that time, all of the saints would probably be unable to sleep well. Why has brother-in-law suddenly disappeared? Qi Mengshan's expression was filled with curiosity. Show! Ling Han suddenly appeared, throwing a punch at Lu Qi's face. He had disappeared without a trace just now, but this punch had been delivered up front, and there was no intention of being secretive. From the moment Ling Han suddenly disappeared, Lu Qi was already prepared. However, he still hadn't realized and expected that Ling Han would actually attack him directly from the front. Fuck, since you want to attack head-on, why use that strange movement technique? That would be too much of a waste. As he mocked in his mind, he hurriedly threw a punch to greet Ling Han's attack. However, how could he possibly be a match for Ling Han now? Pong! His hand was forcefully broken, and the power of Ling Han's punch did not decrease at all. His punch landed solidly, and his head directly exploded. Ling Han withdrew his fist. Wrapped in mystical power, there wasn't a single trace of blood on his hand. Lu Qi wanted to kill him time and time again, and he had long since become impatient. It was just that he had never had the chance to do so. He couldn't kill someone in the Nine Suns' holy land, right? Thus, since he had encountered him here, Ling Han had no intention of leaving this bringer of calamity alive. Seeing how decisive Ling Han was, the people in the surroundings were all shocked. They did not know that there was already a grudge between Ling Han and Lu Qi, and thought that it was Ling Han that wanted to eliminate Song Lan's quarters. Immediately, they all fled in a panic. Though a beauty was good, in the end, she could not compare to one's own life. Right at this moment, the large black dog returned. Little Han, forming a team requires everyone to go together, and only after forming a team can you buy a ship. There was actually such a setting? Ling Han nodded. All right, then let's go. The 4 people and 1 dog set out, heading towards the harbor. The 4 people and 1 dog arrived at the harbor. There was a special place here that was responsible for establishing teams and selling ships. If one wanted to disobey the rules and forcibly mess around, there was no shortage of true self-tier elites here, and there were presently a few bloody corpses hanging at the entrance. Obviously, they wanted to seize a ship by force, and in the end were killed on the spot. You guys want to form a team? An old geezer asked. coughing as if he had a serious illness. However, Ling Han and the others didn't dare to underestimate the old geezer at all. He was a true self-tier elite. That's right. Ling Han nodded. 1, 2, 3, 4. The old geezer counted. There's one less person. Hey, hey! Grandpa Dog is here too. The large black dog stood up on his hind legs, his expression filled with anger. He was bullying a dog too much to actually ignore him. Ling Han and the others couldn't help but smile. Qi Mengshan laughed loudly. Oh, and there's also a dog. The old geezer nodded and tapped his finger on each of the 5 of them. Then he took out a piece of paper, pressed on it, and handed it to Ling Han. All right, the team is established. Take good care of this piece of paper. This is the proof for your team. Every time you reach an island, you have to show it. Otherwise, you will not be able to dock at the island. All right. Ling Han put the piece of paper away. You guys can go buy a ship. Remember to show your proof. The old geezer waved his hand, indicating that they could leave. There were already teams coming to get their certificates. He was very busy. Ling Han and the others left. What a coincidence. The moment they left, they encountered Bailey Che, as well as Lin Lang. Lin Lang was the imperial son of the Fire Cloud Imperial clan. He had once been defeated by Ling Han. Seeing Ling Han, Lin Lang immediately revealed a baleful expression, his killing intent blazing. However, no one dared to make a move here. There was a true self-tier elite standing guard on the sidelines. Thus, whether it was Bailey Che and Lin Lang, they both watched as Ling Han and the others left. Brother Lin, do you have a grudge against Ling Han? Bailey Che asked. This was a sore point for Lin Lang. He was an imperial son and he had actually lost. No matter what, he was unwilling to speak of this. Thus, he only humphed, killing intent circulating in his eyes. Hee. Then Brother Lin, we can be considered to be of the same mind, Bailey Che said with a smile. Lin Lang's eyes lit up. Though he was already in the core formation tier, Ling Han was also growing. He did not have the slightest confidence that he could defeat Ling Han, but added with Bailey Che, with the combined forces of 2 imperial sons, how could it be that there was an opponent that they could not kill? All right. He too broke into a smile. Ling Han and the others went to buy a ship. This cost them 100 Dao stones, but this ship, could this even be called a ship? It was practically a small boat, all right? Young man, this is only Start Point Town, so we will only give you this kind of ship. However, you can get better ships on the island ahead of you, and that will depend on your abilities. The person in charge here laughed loudly. However, don't underestimate this ship either. It's made of special wood that can conceal your aura and prevent the sea beasts from discovering you. So, as long as you don't seek death and insist on swimming in the sea, I guarantee that you can safely reach the next island. Ling Han and the others were speechless. You're in the true self tier, so whatever you say. They boarded the small boat. Ling Han and the large black dog were in charge of steering the oars, and began their journey. The sea was completely calm. In fact, even the surface of the sea was like a mirror, without the slightest ripple. Only the 2 oars that Ling Han and the large black dog had raised would cause ripples. It's so quiet. Song Lan stretched lazily. Her perfect figure revealed her captivating curves in this action, causing one's heart to beat wildly. Sister, this opponent of yours is very powerful. This kind of careless little action is the most attractive to men, Qi Mengshan said in an experienced manner. Qi Menghan's expression darkened, and Song Lan's pretty face also flushed red. She could swear on the heaven and earth she really hadn't been deliberately seducing Ling Han. Indeed, she had only been touched by the scene. Shut up. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Qi Menghan couldn't help but want to violently suppress this mischievous brat. She kept saying embarrassing things. Oh, that's right. Did you guys go to that sea of blood again? Ling Han asked. He had always been very curious about the rest of this matter. Qi Menghan nodded. Yes, but no matter how many saints and imperial weapons enter, it would be useless. It is like a mystery realm in the heaven and earth, and even imperial weapons can't suppress it. Ling Han inhaled sharply. Even the imperial weapon couldn't suppress it? The awakening of the imperial weapon was equivalent to the awakening of an ancestral king. Was there anything in the world that the ancestral king couldn't deal with? This was especially the case since a great many imperial clans had brought the imperial weapon with them this time. He suddenly recalled Brother Monkey's ancestor, the Battle Saint Emperor and ancestral King Ling Tian. They had all gone to the edge of the universe to search for the secret of immortality. It was said that it was also extremely dangerous. Even the ancestral king brought the imperial weapon with him. Could it be that this sea of blood was a similar desolate land? However, in such a dangerous place, there was also a red-haired beauty who seemed to be sleeping. This was too strange. Ling Han was extremely curious and really wanted to investigate further. Brother Ling, can I take a look at that clay figurine? Qi Menghan asked. All right. Ling Han nodded, then looked towards the large black dog. The large black dog was instantly reluctant, but he still took out the clay figurine and handed it to Qi Menghan as he said, You definitely have to return it. Qi Menghan was rendered speechless. Just how stingy was this damn dog? Qi Mengshan made a face and said, We're not returning it. You haven't even married yet, and you're already asking for a dowry? The large black dog mumbled. What did you say? Qi Menghan asked with a smile. However, everyone could clearly hear the killing intent in her voice. The large black dog hurriedly smiled and did not continue to act despicable. Qi Menghan began to fiddle with the clay figurine with a focused expression. Of course, her face was now covered by a white veil, so no one could see her. How is it? Can you tell where it comes from? Ling Han asked. This must have been created by the ancestral king, Qi Menghan said. Only when one has reached the level of the ancestral king would they be able to change the regulations of heaven and earth. Thus, controlling the clay figurine allows one to control others. Ling Han and the large black dog exchanged a look, and both of them broke into a smile. They had really picked up this bargain too easily. According to Bailey Che, Imperial sons all have protective treasures that can resist all negative effects? Ling Han asked. That's right. Qi Menghuan nodded. This is all created by the ancestral king. In truth, it is used to resist the invasion on the level of the soul, but there is a limited number, so it can only be armed on imperial sons and imperial daughters. When imperial sons and imperial daughters mature, it will be passed down. Ling Han gave an "oh." So that was how it was. In that case, wouldn't the murderous aura attack be ineffective when he faced off against Bailey Che? And then there was the suppression effects of the primal chaos celestial core. He would also be immune to this. How would he know if he didn't try? Ling Han smiled and said to Qi Menghan, Beauty Qi, can you do a test for me? Qi Menghan rolled her eyes. This guy was really shooting his mouth off, but she just couldn't get angry. Strange. Ling Han used Qi Menghan as a test, naturally to see if the murderous aura attack and the primal chaos celestial core were effective. First, the murderous aura attacked. In the end, it was ineffective. Though this was within Ling Han's expectations, after confirming it, he was still slightly disappointed. He had lost a powerful ultimate move. Thankfully, he had tested it in advance. Otherwise, if he had made an error in estimation in actual battle, that would be fatal. Secondly, the suppression from the primal chaos celestial core. This was effective. What? This could actually take effect through a great emperor tier-level treasure? Neither Ling Han nor Qi Menghan had expected this, and they both looked surprised. Brother Ling, what kind of ability is this? Qi Menghan asked in surprise. Is this a mystical power that you were born with? Ling Han hesitated slightly. However, since she hadn't lied to him, he couldn't bring himself to deliberately deceive her. Moreover, even if he revealed all his secrets now, so what? After they left, their relevant memories would be erased. This is the ability of the only celestial cauldron after creating the fusion cauldron, he said. After advancing into the core formation tier, the celestial core also inherited this trait. Qi Menghan looked surprised. Brother-in-law, I'm also a 9 cauldrons fusion cauldron, so why can't I? Qi Mengshan said from the sidelines. This kind of ability was exciting just thinking about it. It could directly reduce your opponent's battle prowess by 3 heavens and make others die of depression. Because she was too curious, Qi Menghan didn't snipe her sister this time. Instead, she simply stared at Ling Han. On the sidelines, Song Lan was also very curious and watched very closely. Ling Han didn't hesitate. Since he had already decided to say it, there was nothing for him to hesitate about. I'm not a 9 cauldrons fusion cauldron, but 10 cauldrons fusion cauldron. Instantly, a dead silence fell over the small raft. I'm rolling. I don't need in or to row my boat. I'm completely relying on waves. The large black dog sang in a gong-like voice. The 3 women all came back to their senses, their faces filled with disbelief. How is that possible? Qi Menghan was the first to speak. 9 cauldrons is the limit. How did you manage to reach 10 cauldrons? She was a member of the imperial clan, so she knew many secrets. It was because of this that she couldn't believe it. 10 cauldrons. How is this possible? That's right. 9 is the pinnacle of heaven and earth. How can one surpass 9 cauldrons? Qi Mengshan also said. Ling Han smiled. Perhaps it is precisely because of this that the celestial cauldron has gained a special ability after shattering the extreme number of heaven and earth. This time, Qi Menghan and her sister were rendered speechless. That's right. They were all 9 cauldrons fusion cauldron, so why couldn't they be like Ling Han? Casting one's gaze around the world, though there were very few 9 cauldrons fusion cauldron, as long as one was an imperial son on imperial daughter, 9 cauldrons fusion cauldron was basically standard, but 10 cauldrons fusion cauldron? This was unheard of. Qi Menghan looked at Ling Han. She raised her evaluation of this young prodigy, who she had initially thought highly of. This guy would at least be a saint in future, and an incredibly powerful saint at that. If there was still no emperor in this world, then he would be enough to sweep aside all opposition in this world. Of course, becoming emperor was too difficult. Not only did it require great intelligence, great opportunities, great comprehension, it also required great fortune. Throughout history, how many ancestral kings had appeared in total? Meanwhile, Song Lan's eyes were shining. She knew that Ling Han was very impressive, but he had actually managed to achieve 10 cauldrons fusion cauldron, which naturally filled her with even more admiration. She had completely become Ling Han's fangirl. Sister, you saw it, didn't you? Qi Mengshan said in a serious tone. Hurry up and make your move. Settle things once and for all. Otherwise, you'll regret it in the future. This damn girl. Qi Menghan's pretty face was flushed red. Finally, she could no longer be trifled with. She picked up this mischievous brat and gave her a few knocks on the head. Wah! Qi Mengshan grabbed her head and wailed. You can't hit my head. If I become stupid, can you afford the compensation? Amidst this banter, time passed very quickly. 2 days later, an island appeared ahead of them. It was very strange. They clearly didn't know the location, and there was no wind on the sea. They were just rowing around randomly, yet they still found the first island. If this was a coincidence, and they were really bursting with luck. Strange. They steered the ship to reach the coast, but there were cliffs everywhere. Thus, they circled around the island, and soon discovered a harbor. Heavens, this harbor was really too big, wasn't it? Ling Han and the others all looked stunned. This kind of size wasn't in terms of capacity. For example, a small harbor could only hold 20 ships, while 100 ships could be docked here. Instead, it was in terms of size. A colossal ship, a colossal house, and a colossal person. This was a nation of giants, and each person was at least 30 meters tall. In front of such an existence, Ling Han and the others might not be as insignificant as ants, but they were really too unnoticeable. They found a spot to dock their ship, but tragically discovered that their ship was too small, and even the ropes were not long enough. Wrapping the rope around that thick pole, the rope could only be wrapped half around it, and could not be tied at all. This was very awkward. Ha! Here comes another dwarf. Pong, pong, pong. Heavy footsteps were heard, and a giant walked over. However, his face was all smiles, and he did not look fierce, and this dwarf obviously did not have any derogatory meaning. Where is your proof? He stretched out a hand and directly grabbed the small boat from the sea, placing it on the covered bridge. Fine then. Ling Han and the others all jumped down from the ship. Meanwhile, Ling Han handed over his proof. All of you, each of you stretch out your hand and press down on the piece of paper, the giant said, using the tips of his finger to pinch the piece of paper. Ling Han, the others, and the dog all stretched out their hands and paw and touched the paper. With every touch, there would be a flicker of light on the paper, as if it was proving their identities. It's done. The giant returned the proof to Ling Han. Follow me. He walked forwards, and every step he took covered a few meters. Ling Han and the others hurriedly followed. Thankfully, though they were small in stature, their abilities were extremely strong. It was completely no problem for them to keep up with the others' pace. They continued to walk. After exiting the harbor, the giant started to speed up. Pung, pung, pung. The ground trembled violently. Ling Han and the others also used movement techniques to catch up. In terms of speed, they were not inferior at all. This giant didn't cultivate any cultivation techniques. Instead, he simply relied on his physical power to run, Qi Menghan said through divine sense. This was terrifying. It was only brute force, yet it could reach such a level, and for brute force to be so powerful, it must be accompanied by another effect, and that was the physique of this giant must be incredibly strong. Otherwise, it would not be able to withstand that kind of power. With a single punch, it would directly cause bones to break, flesh to explode. After following the giant for a while, a massive fortress was already in sight ahead of them. The castle that the giants lived in was naturally a fortress of giants. It was probably more than 10 times larger than the normal size. They entered into the fortress, and the giant that had brought them here turned around and left. He had absolutely no intention of giving them an explanation, and was not the slightest bit responsible. All right, then they'll go and find out the situation themselves. Ling Han and the others roamed around the fortress, and soon found out about the situation. If he wanted to obtain the first piece of the legendary fragment on this island of giants, it was simple. He only had to defeat the giants in the competition. Ling Han took a look. There were a total of 3 rounds of competition. The first was the steamed bun competition, consuming all the steamed buns within the specified time, and being faster than their opponents would win the competition. Furthermore, not only would they be able to obtain the legendary fragment, they would also be able to obtain a large ship built by the giants, which could withstand violent winds and massive waves. Previously, the sea was calm, but from the giant island onwards, it was a different story. Thus, switching to a larger ship was extremely necessary. Moreover, if they didn't win the bun-eating contest, they wouldn't be able to obtain the legendary fragment, so there was no meaning in heading to the next island. Furthermore, only if they won the tournament would the giants stamp their proof of identity. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to land on the next island. Thus, no matter what, they definitely had to win this steamed bun competition. The second competition was the wrestling competition, which was also a competition with the giants. If one won, they could win a prize. The giants would install an azure dragon shield on the large ship, which could resist powerful attacks. There were demonic beasts in the sea, and their abilities were incredibly terrifying. Thus, if they had the azure dragon shield, it would greatly increase their safety. The third was the Origin Dragon Elephant Tournament, competing in speed with the giant riding on the Origin Dragon Elephant. The first to cross the finish line would win, and this would also get a reward of having the Golden Dragon Cannon installed on the large ship. The Azure Dragon Shield was defensive, while the Golden Dragon Cannon was offensive. It posed a great threat to the sea beasts. Qi Menghan and Song Lan directly shook their heads, giving up on the bun-eating competition. To say nothing of the fact that they weren't gluttons, even if they could eat, as exquisite beauties of the galaxy, as precious daughters of the imperial clan, how could they bring themselves to eat buns like crazy in public without any care for their image? Thus, this heavy responsibility naturally fell on Ling Han and the large black dog. "Captain, we're counting on you," the 3 women all said to Ling Han. "When did I become captain?" Ling Han scratched his head. "You won't shirk your responsibility. It was clear that they were shifting the responsibility. Ling Han didn't mind. After all, he was a man, so it wasn't a big deal for him to eat like crazy. Come, old black. Let's go eat buns. All right. The large black dog licked his lips. Grandpa Dog will eat so much that they will be driven to poverty. The man and dog went to register, but there were already a great many outsiders here. There were a great many people registering, so they had to line up and wait for a while. For example, Bailey Che and Lin Lang had also arrived. When they saw Ling Han, both of them looked baleful. If it was not for the fact that this was the territory of the giants, they would definitely have made their move already. What did an imperial son have to be afraid of? Even if they killed the Tao child of the Holy Land, would the Holy Land dare to go to the imperial clan to capture the culprit? This was what an imperial clan was like. Only they could be overbearing. Ling Han naturally wouldn't back down, and he returned their cold gazes. There were still a great many people who kept a low profile. Ling Han discovered 3 people whose abilities were definitely not beneath Bailey Che. But no one recognized them. It was probably other imperial sons. After a while, a giant came out to inform them that the first group's competition could begin. In this group, there were a total of 10 people. 9 of them were outsiders, and only one of them was a giant. However, only the person who won first place could be considered to have won the competition. Merely defeating the giant was useless. Of course, 3 people from each team came, but as long as one of them got the first place, the entire team would pass. Ling Han and the large black dog had not come here to register at the first moment. Thus, it was not their turn to be in the first group. They began watching from the sidelines, so that they could first look at the battle prowess of the giant. Hiss! When the giant carried out basin after basin of buns, everyone exclaimed in shock. Fuck, this was called a basin? It was even bigger than a bathtub, all right? Those buns were also the size of manhole covers. To an ordinary person, to say nothing of a whole basin, just one was enough to fill them up. A participating giant also walked out. He was very sturdy, and his stomach was even rounder. With a single look, one could tell that he was a standard glutton. Begin! With a command, everyone began to wolf down their food. There were also giants watching the competition on the sidelines, cheering for their companions. That giant was really eating very fast, swallowing a massive bun in 2 to 3 bites. However, there were also many outsiders, each showing their mystical power. Some demon race members transformed into their original form, and their size naturally increased greatly. Their mouths also became bigger, and this greatly increased the speed at which they ate buns. However, there was no need for humans to be afraid. With the stimulation of mystical power, their whole person could also enlarge several times, or even in fact, dozens of times over in a short period of time. In this way, the colossal creatures were all eating buns madly. The large black dog couldn't help but burst into laughter. This scene was far too hilarious. Meanwhile, the imperial sons like Bailey Che and Lin Lang had slightly ugly expressions. This was really too disheveled, seriously affecting their glorious image. Thankfully, after leaving this place, everyone's memories would basically be completely erased. No one would remember such a sorry state. However, since the giants had used this kind of competition, they were naturally all big eaters, especially the giants participating in the competition. They were definitely even greater gluttons. With a whirlwind, he practically swept away all the buns in an instant. It was too fast. When he was done, the second fastest person still had 2 buns left. Fine, no one from the first group had succeeded. Come, come, come. The second group begins. The giants laughed loudly, treating this as an interesting matter. In truth, it was indeed very hilarious. This was the first time they had come across a competition that did not involve fighting and killing, nor did he need to use his brain. All one needed to do was eat. The 9 people from the second group went up, and there was still only 1 member from the giants. Ling Han and the large black dog continued to watch the battle, but Lin Lang and Bailey Che were in the second group, and they entered into the match area together. After a while, large bowls of steamed buns were brought out. The giant this time was not from the last tournament, but he was also massive in size with a rounded belly. His battle prowess definitely astonishingly strong. Begin! With a command, Everyone immediately wolfed down the food. Ling Han looked towards Lin Lang and Bailey Che and couldn't help but feel surprised. Imperial sons were really extraordinary. Even this kind of competition wouldn't be a problem for them. Each of them had been enlarged dozens of times, and their height was not inferior to the giant. Saints, for example, were completely capable of turning their bodies into something larger than planets. With a single palm strike, planets would be obliterated. However, the core formation tier was naturally not as powerful as this. One could only be enlarged several times to dozens of times over. As for the exact number, that would depend on one's own strength and natural talent. And for the likes of the Imperial Son, he was obviously much stronger than any ordinary person. In the end, Lin Lang and Bailey Che finished their buns at practically the same time, even faster than the giant. Right, they had become the first team to win a legendary fragment. The two of them smiled, then swept an eye over Ling Han, revealing an expression of disdain. Your abilities are indeed out of the ordinary, but in a competition like eating buns, it would depend on how many times you can enlarge your body. The larger your size, the faster you would be able to eat. Thus, this has something to do with bloodline. How could a mediocre mortal compare to the Imperial clan? After making some preparations, the third group's competition immediately began. This time, it was finally the large black dog's turn. Coincidentally, though he and Ling Han had registered together, he just happened to be stuck at the last place of the third group. Thus, Ling Han had to go to the fourth group. It didn't matter. No matter who won in the team, the entire team would pass. The third giant came up, and the battle was about to begin at any moment. Wait! The large black dog suddenly raised his paw, and when everyone, including the giant, looked towards him, he continued, "What filling is this bun? Fall!" Everyone almost fell over. This was a tournament, not an invitation to be a guest. Why do you care about the stuffing of the buns? Just close your eyes and eat. The giants were all very simple and honest. One of them scratched his head and said, "Dog meat filling." The large black dog's expression immediately turned livid. Grandpa Dog protests. "This is blatant persecution." Everyone laughed loudly. Though a dog demon had completely surpassed the level of a wild dog, it was indeed a little inexcusable for a dog demon to eat dog meat. "Then let's trade for another," a giant said. He was quite humane. "What stuffing is it this time?" the large black dog asked. "Wolf meat." The large black dog bared his teeth. Wolves and dogs belonged to the same family. Forget it, there was still some difference. He could swallow this bite. Not long after, a new pot of buns was served. "Begin!" With a command, everyone showed their mystical power and began to wolf down. Compared to Grandpa Dog, don't you know that Grandpa Dog is a glutton? The large black dog shook its body and turned into a massive black dog. Its iron underwear was still dazzling, and enlarged along with its size. Clearly, it was a precious material. Pooh! Someone was eating, but when they saw this scene, they spluttered. This was too blinding, and had great destructive power. This spitting immediately caused a chain reaction. Pooh, pew, 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 was this still a bun-eating contest? It was practically a bun-spitting contest. Even that giant's throat was moving, and he couldn't swallow the bun that was in his mouth no matter what. Only the large black dog was completely unaffected. He swallowed like crazy, and very soon, he had finished all the steamed buns in the basin. He had won. The large black dog leaped up and made a gesture of victory. Then, seeing that everyone was throwing up like crazy, he couldn't help but feel shocked. "Oh no! This bun is poisonous." The spectators were both amused and speechless. Where had this guy popped out from? He was really screwing others over too much, wasn't he? But no matter what, the large black dog had indeed won first place. After taking out proof of identity, the giants very readily gifted Ling Han and the others a large ship. Then, should they continue competing in the following two competitions? They should, of course. There were fierce beasts on the seas, and there was no shortage of true self-tier elites. If they really encountered them, the odds would definitely be against them. Even if they managed to fortunately escape, if the ship was gone, the next island would not admit them at all right? In other words, Their journey to the true dragon abyss would end here. To withdraw without reaping any benefits? How could that be allowed? Thus, they definitely had to participate in the next two competitions, and they also had to win them. The Azure Dragon Shield and Golden Dragon Cannon would be available for the rest of the journey. Thus, spending more time here would allow the subsequent journey to be even smoother. It was worth it, because the other two competitions could only be challenged by the winning team of the bun-eating competition. There were naturally fewer people. The second round was the wrestling competition. Qi Menghan and the others naturally refused again. It was clearly impossible for them to fight the giants head-on. Even if it was an ordinary woman, she could not possibly embrace another like this, what more when it was an exquisite beauty like them. Ling Han and the large black dog could only continue their battle. This time, Ling Han was lined up in front of the large black dog. On a grassy plain, a wrestling competition was taking place. Bailey Che and Lin Lang's team had already won. When they passed by, they gave Ling Han a cold, murderous look, and then strode off. Obviously, they were going to challenge the third Origin Dragon Elephant Tournament. There were a great many giants watching, as if they were very, very free. There was absolutely no need for them to do anything serious. The tournament had a rule, and no celestial technique or precious tool could be used. One could only rely on one's own power. Ling Han was unafraid. His raw power was already as high as 28 heavens, and among those in the core formation tier, only an Imperial Sun who was in the consummate level could suppress him. And this was still because he was only in the late stage of core formation tier. Once he advanced into the consummate level, so what if the Imperial Sun was in the consummate level? He could suppress him with a single hand. The competition began, and his opponent was a sturdy giant. From the very beginning, he pounced fiercely. Ling Han also enlarged his body. Otherwise, how could he wrestle? Pong! 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 Their bodies collided, and pure power reverberated. Wrestling required technique, but if the power gap was too wide, techniques would be completely useless. Ling Han threw the giant over his shoulder, one-handedly, and both-handedly time and time again. After a few times, his opponent had no choice but to admit defeat and surrender. He was completely no match for him. He took out his credentials, and after verifying his identity, the giants set up the Azure Dragon Shield for their ship. Very good, he was still missing one. The third tournament, Origin Dragon Elephant Riding Tournament. This competition was suitable for both men and women. Thus, not only were Ling Han and the large black dog participating, but even Qi Menghan and the others were extremely enthusiastic. "We can't always let you guys work, right?" Qi Menghan said. "Hee hee. Isn't it because you guys also want to play?" Ling Han poked the nail on the head. "Brother-in-law, if you speak like this, you're destined to be lonely for the rest of your life," Qi Mengshan said in an experienced manner. "Haha, I'm really sorry. I already have a wife." No matter what, in the third round of the competition, the 4 people and 1 dog had all registered. There were 5 of them, and added with Bailey Che, Lin Lang, and 3 giants, there were a total of 10 people. This was the lineup for the competition. However, it was already quite late, and the tournament would be held tomorrow afternoon. After a night, many more people passed through the glutton competition, but those that could pass through the second round were relatively few. Though Ling Han could completely thrash the giants, that did not mean that the giants were not powerful. Their raw power was as high as 20 heavens, and added with their wrestling techniques, their abilities were very strong. On the second day, everyone was busy with their own competitions. Though there were some that had passed the second round, and were about to join the third round of competition, the schedule for the competition had already been decided, so they would have to wait for the second group to begin. "Celestial Maiden Qi, though I admire you very much, a competition is a competition. I won't go easy on you," Bailey Che said to Qi Menghan. If it was not because of Ling Han, he actually would not mind stepping aside to win the favor of his goddess. In any case, after this failure, he could just do it again. However, with Ling Han's presence, there was naturally no way he would yield. Meanwhile, Lin Lang turned his gaze to Song Lan. This was the 9th most beautiful woman in the galaxy, and her beauty and bearing was not the slightest bit inferior to Qi Menghan. Furthermore, an imperial daughter was too difficult to court, so it was still this kind of beauty that was more practical. However, the two women were both cold, and had no intention of responding at all. After being given a cold shoulder, Bailey Che and Lin Lang both vented their anger on Ling Han, and thought that it was because of Ling Han that the two women ignored them in disdain. Humph, he was just a lowly commoner. What was so good about him? However, they quickly withdrew their attention and focused on their mounts. Origin Dragon Elephant, this was a kind of massive demonic beast, and was a mount that was specially provided for giants. For people with normal physiques like them, it was practically overwhelmingly huge. Sitting on it was like sitting on a small hill. Thus, when riding on the Origin Dragon Elephant, one also needed to enlarge their body size. Otherwise, it would be completely difficult to control. Ling Han was also observing. This Origin Dragon Elephant's whole body was covered with scales, and at first glance it really did look a bit like dragon scales. Sitting on it was a little painful. Because the tournament had not begun, the 10 Origin Dragon Elephants were all standing, waving their long trunks in boredom, and occasionally using their thick and long tusks to dig at the ground. Finally, the competition began. The 10 of them patted the Origin Dragon Elephants' bodies. Tung, 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 and the Origin Dragon Elephants instantly charged out. Previously, these big guys were quite docile, but once they started to run, they were practically lunatics, completely letting themselves go. Pong, pong, pong. They ran madly wherever there was a path. But there was no path. Their speed did not slow down either. Instead, they crashed into whatever they saw. One after another, trees fell and rocks shattered. This was still fine, but the key was that when these Origin Dragon Elephants encountered a mountain, they wouldn't dodge or retreat. They stubbornly crashed into it and couldn't be pulled back at all. What was the result? Of course, it would directly pass out, and the rider would have to wait for it to regain consciousness on its own. This was incredible. At this time, it would really have to depend on skill and brute force. The Origin Dragon Elephant that Ling Han was sitting on was also letting itself loose. It would crash into whatever it saw, but it was no match for Ling Han's great strength. When it encountered trees, rocks, or whatnot, Ling Han was unconcerned, but if it was seeking death by crashing towards mountains, that would definitely not do. Under Ling Han's powerful restraints, the Origin Dragon Elephant could only obediently continue its journey. However, the large black dog, Song Lan and Qi Mengshan couldn't do the same. They couldn't control the crazed Origin Dragon Elephant at all, and they were all thrown off. They had no choice but to wait for those seeking death Origin Dragon Elephants to awaken. To say nothing of them, even 2 of the 3 giants couldn't control their mounts and fell solidly together with the Origin Dragon Elephants. At present, the only people still competing were Ling Han, Qi Menghan, Bailey Che, Lin Lang, and a giant. The 5 of them had clearly surpassed the rest by a large margin, and the champion would definitely emerge among them. To prodigies like Ling Han and the others, they had already familiarized themselves with how to control the Origin Dragon Elephant in this little bit of time. Thus, they became more and more proficient, and gradually, they slowly pulled away from the remaining giant. The competition between the 5 of them became a 4-person battle. The 4 Origin Dragon Elephants were now racing neck to neck, and there was practically no one in the lead. Humph! Lin Lang sneered and moved resolutely. He delivered a palm strike at the Origin Dragon Elephant that Qi Menghan was sitting on, and Bailey Che also moved at the same time. The target of his attack was the Origin Dragon Elephant that Ling Han was sitting on. In the rules of the tournament, it was only said that one could not attack one's opponent, but there was no mention that one could not target the mount of another. Ling Han and Qi Menghan naturally wouldn't let them succeed. They both moved, intercepting their respective opponents. Hong! 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 The 4 prodigies started a fierce battle. This was a different kind of competition. The 4 of them did not attack each other, but rather targeted each other's steeds. In any case, as long as they injured the other steed, they would naturally be able to force the other party out of the competition. Ling Han smiled faintly. You guys are indeed going to do this? Good. He activated the black light of illusion and blasted it towards the Origin Dragon Elephant that Lin Lang and Bailey Che were sitting on. However, he immediately discovered that these 2 fierce beasts were actually completely unaffected. What the heck? Ling Han was slightly astonished. It wasn't strange for Imperial Sun-level beings to be able to withstand his black light of illusion. After all, they had the treasure created by the Great Emperor to defend against soul-level attacks. However, were mere wild beasts this freakish? Could it be that this kind of treasure could even protect a mount that they were riding on? Ling Han didn't believe it. He shot out another black light of illusion at his own mount, but the result was the same. The origin dragon elephant was still running madly on its own, completely unaffected. Hiss! This time, Ling Han was so shocked that he was slightly dazed. The origin dragon elephant was indeed simple and reckless, but no matter how simple it was, it did not mean that it could not be affected by the illusion. Strange! Strange! Ling Han! Qi Menghan shouted in a soft voice. Ling Han's distraction was far too exaggerated. If she hadn't stepped forward to help, his origin dragon elephant would have definitely suffered several attacks already. Realization dawned on Ling Han, and he hurriedly continued to attack. However, going on like this was not a good idea. It would be very difficult to decide the victor. Ling Han communicated through divine sense and said to Qi Menghan, "You just focus on charging forward. I'll hold them back." This origin dragon elephant was too wild, and controlling them required a great amount of energy. Thus, it was too distracting to both battle and control the elephant. If one could concentrate on controlling the elephant to advance, the speed would naturally be greatly increased. "Can you do it?" Qi Menghan frowned. In terms of battle prowess, she was much stronger than Ling Han, so it would be more appropriate for her to hold them back. "Haha! Never ask a man if he can." Ling Han laughed loudly. Qi Menghan rolled her eyes madly at this, and almost couldn't help but charge down from the origin dragon elephant. The overall situation is more important, she thought to herself. Ling Han unleashed his full battle prowess, unleashing a barrage of attacks at Lin Lang and Bailey Che's steeds. Meanwhile, Qi Menghan took advantage of the opening to control the steed with all her might, instantly leaving them in the dust. "Brother Lin, you go and give chase. Leave this brat to me," Bailey Che said proudly. Ling Han's strength was that he had a treasure that could absorb and attack power. In terms of true battle prowess, Ling Han was not just a little bit inferior to him. "All right." Lin Lang did not hold back, and immediately went all out to steer the elephant. Ling Han smiled and said, "What's the hurry? Let's have a nice chat." He shot out a primal chaos divine lightning, which was incredibly fast, and it landed on Lin Lang's steed. Instantly, that origin dragon elephant roared in pain, and almost stumbled and fell. "Damn it!" Lin Lang roared loudly, and immediately charged back. Bailey Che had no choice but to begrudging. He could only ride the elephant forwards on his own, in pursuit of Qi Menghan. Ling Han was already powerless to stop him. After all, they could not target riders and could only attack mounts. However, Qi Menghan had already gained a lead, and with her strength, she should be able to last until the end. It was done. He laughed loudly, and exchanged blows with Lin Lang's steed. In this way, the two of them had actually withdrawn from the battle for the champion. Now, it was up to Bailey Che to see if he could catch up to Qi Menghan. However, the chances of this were pitifully small. Otherwise, Qi Menghan, the strongest imperial daughter of the Donglin imperial clan, would really be undeserving of her name. After a while, the giants sent out a signal that the Origin Dragon Elephant Tournament had ended. The champion was indeed Qi Menghan. All right, they had passed all 3 rounds of the competition, so they could set out towards the second island. The Azure Dragon Shield and Golden Dragon Cannon were already installed, and they had also obtained the legendary fragment. The 4 people and 1 dog boarded the ship and set off for the next island. This large ship was indeed different. There was also a compass on the ship that pointed at a target. "No wonder we have to switch to a bigger ship. Without this compass to guide us, we don't know where we would be going," the large black dog said. Little Han, why aren't you saying anything?" Turned to look at Ling Han. "You guys turn around," Ling Han said. The 3 people and 1 dog all turned around, looking towards the giant island. Immediately, their expressions changed drastically. How was this possible? What they saw now was an expanse of lifelessness. The whole island did not have the slightest bit of green, nor did it have the slightest bit of life. There were only dilapidated houses, enshrouded in a hazy gray. But in their impression of the giant island, it was covered with green trees, birdsong and fragrance of flowers. It was filled with vitality. "What's going on?" Song Lan murmured. Ling Han exhaled sharply and said, "We've seen ghosts." This wasn't expressing his emotions of feeling as if he had seen a ghost. He was truly stating a fact. Hearing these words, even Qi Menghan couldn't help but shiver. She frowned and said, "You're saying that those giants and origin dragon elephants are all Yin souls?" "No, I don't sense any Yin soul aura at all." She was no stranger to Yin souls. In the past, she had even charged into the netherworld. Ling Han shook his head. "Those are not Yin souls. Instead, it should have been created by the will of an elite." Hiss! Could it be that true dragon? Qi Menghan and the others all exclaimed in shock. The true dragon abyss's appearance on the heavenly dragon planet made it really hard to believe that this had nothing to do with that true dragon. The first dragon in the world, and the only true dragon, was equivalent to the existence of a great emperor. Even after countless years, it would not be strange for the power left behind to still be effective. Pooh! The large black dog's expression was ugly. "Then what the hell is up with the buns that Grandpa Dog ate?" Just thinking about it was disgusting. It was something created by a ghost. The reason why Ling Han had such a judgment was because the black light of illusion was ineffective against the origin dragon elephant, which made him suspect that all the living creatures here were actually not real, and that was why they were not affected by the black light of illusion. Otherwise, he would definitely have been kept in the dark as well. Now, he would not even think of turning around to take a look. He took out the so-called legendary fragment. That was a broken scale. "Dragon scale," Qi Menghan immediately said. She took the scale, then shook her head. "Unfortunately, the divine essence inside has all been lost. Otherwise, this would be of boundless value. Forget it. Let's take a look at the might and restrictions of the Azure Dragon Shield and Golden Dragon Cannon first," Ling Han said. They went to take a look at these two items. After the Azure Dragon Shield was unfurled, it could withstand attacks on the level of True Self tier, and could last for 10 minutes at most, but this was under the condition that it would not be attacked. After being attacked, the duration of the shield would be shortened, and as for how long it could last, that would depend on the strength of the attack. Opening the Azure Dragon Shield required a cooldown period of as long as 30 minutes. In other words, there was an empty window of at least 20 minutes in this period of time. Looking at the Golden Dragon Cannon again, it could fire True Self tier level attacks, which were divided into two modes. One was a single shot, and every shot would have a cooldown period of 10 seconds, and the other was a series of 10 shots, but the cooldown period was as high as 5 minutes. Whether it was the Azure Dragon Shield or the Golden Dragon Cannon, they both needed energy. Now, there were only 2 energy crystals on the ship, and once they were used up, they would be gone. However, according to the information obtained from the giant island, energy crystals could be bought from every subsequent island. Boom! The huge waves crashed onto the ship, causing the ship to tremble violently from time to time. It was extremely uncomfortable. Thankfully, the 4 people and 1 dog were all in the core formation tier, so it did not have much effect on them. True enough, from the giant island onwards, the situation on the seas had become worse. If they had still been on a small ship, such winds and waves could easily overturn the ship and send them into the water. In the distance, there were sea beasts tossing and turning, and occasionally, they would appear on the surface of the sea. In fact, they were even larger than their ship. Ling Han and the large black dog controlled the Azure Dragon Shield, while the other controlled the Golden Dragon Cannon. Once they encountered the sea beast, they would immediately have to spread out a shield, and at the same time, use the Golden Dragon Cannon to chase it off. Their luck wasn't bad. The sea beasts didn't seem to have discovered them, or they weren't interested, and they didn't attack. 2 days passed, and the winds and waves finally stopped. The sea returned to its usual calm, like a massive blue agate. Its color was intoxicating, and as the warm sunlight shone down, it made one feel warm all over and incredibly comfortable. Ling Han and the large black dog lay on the deck to bask in the sun. Meanwhile, Qi Menghan and Songlan were extremely reserved. However, they also drew out a chair and sat at the bow of the ship. The sunlight and scenery were truly refreshing. Qi Mengshan was the only one who didn't care about her image. She lay next to Ling Han and the large black dog. With the gentle breeze, she could fall asleep at any time. Boom! But right at this moment, a great commotion suddenly arose on the seas, causing the large ship to rock back and forth. What was going on? Wasn't it completely peaceful? Not good. There's a sea beast. Qi Menghan stood up, looked into the distance, and immediately sent out a warning. Ling Han and the large black dog also got to their feet, each doing their own job. They immediately turned the ship around, heading in the direction away from the sea beast. However, this sea beast must have discovered them, and seemed to be very interested in them. It was actually chasing after them. This sea beast was extremely strange. It looked like a fish, yet it had 6 legs. Its tail was incredibly long, and there were even spikes growing from its tail. It broke through the seawater at an astonishing speed. I can't get rid of it. Prepare to attack. Ling Han aimed the golden dragon cannon at his target, then fired a shot. Shio! A golden light blasted out, shooting towards that sea beast. Instantly, the sea exploded, and waves shot straight into the skies. They were as tall as 3,000 meters and were incredibly terrifying, but in the next instant, that sea beast rushed out of the waves. With a wave of its tail, as if it was flying in the skies, it leaped out in an astonishing arc, and then descended towards the large ship. Fuck! The large black dog hurriedly unfurled his azure dragon shield. Pong! In the next instant, the sea beast crashed into them. Under the intense collision, everyone on the ship was thrown off their feet. The azure dragon shield only blocked for a moment before shattering, entering into a cooldown period that lasted as long as 30 minutes. Ling Han resolutely went into continuous firing mode. Shio, 10 shots were fired at the same time. Under the barrage of attacks from close quarters, the 10 consecutive shots caused the sea beast to wail in pain. A large hole had been pierced into its abdomen, and blood was gushing out. However, this did not cause any fatal injury to the sea beast. It was only in so much pain that it was rolling violently in the sea. Let's go! Ling Han hurriedly steered the ship. The sea beast was too terrifying. He couldn't kill it even with 10 shots, so it was best to take this opportunity to leave quickly. As expected, after only a while, that sea beast suppressed its injuries and set off in pursuit of the large ship. However, this little bit of time had already allowed the distance between the two sides to increase considerably. By the time that sea beast caught up to them, the golden dragon cannon should be usable again. 5 minutes later, Ling Han fired again. This wasn't a continuous attack mode, but now that the sea beast was severely injured, a single attack mode was enough to cause it a lot of trouble. After chasing for a day, this sea beast was finally too heavily injured. It had no choice but to turn around and dive into the deep sea to recuperate. The 4 people and 1 dog all breathed a sigh of relief. After throwing off that sea beast, the second island was finally within sight. After making a small circle, they saw the harbor and immediately approached. In terms of size, this island was very normal. Thus, the residents on this island were definitely not giants. However, when Ling Han and the others discovered the residents here, none of them thought that this island was much more normal than the giant island. That was because the residents here actually had quite a number of heads. There were at least 2 of them, and there were some with even 5, 6, or over a dozen of them. Was there a multiple-headed tribe in this world? Yes, Qi Menghan said with a nod. In the ancient era, there was indeed a multiple-headed tribe. They were extremely talented, and they were able to form several minds. Just think, just how terrifying would their battle prowess be? In other words, it could form a considerable number of celestial cores. One of them was equivalent to a whole group. Then why would this race have died out? The large black dog was puzzled. Logically speaking, this race should be incredibly powerful. Qi Menghan shook her head. It is said that at that time, there were a great many powerful great clans that wanted to obtain the secret of the multiple-headed tribe and how they formed multiple minds. Thus, large numbers of the multiple-headed tribe were captured for research, which led to the extermination of this race. This caused Ling Han and the others to shake their heads. It was a crime to possess a treasure. They were really too innocent. At that time, though a considerable number of saints had emerged from the multiple-headed tribe, and their battle prowess was all earth-shattering, it was an era when true dragons, true phoenixes, and other divine beasts coexisted. What was the use of having a great many saints? Qi Menghan sighed ruefully. A powerful tribe died just like that. What a pity. Combined with the situation on the giant island, it is probable that the multiple-headed tribe here is not real either, but rather born from the intent of an elite. Essentially, it is only a sliver of divine sense, Ling Han said. However, we can't underestimate them just because of this. For beings like the great emperor, a single thought can come true. Thus, this isn't much different from the true multiple-headed tribe. Moreover, because it's born from willpower, it instead has a greater advantage, Qi Menghan said solemnly. Ling Han nodded in agreement. Merely the fact that the black light of illusion couldn't take effect was already very impressive. Thus, everyone should still act according to the rules. The 4 people and 1 dog landed on the shore, and immediately, a 2-headed person came over to check their proof. After confirming the identities of the 5 of them, he allowed them to pass. They arrived at the residential area of the multiple-headed tribe. There were more than 10,000 tribesmen residing here, and most of them were at the core formation tier. There were also quite a number of true self tiers, so if they wanted to use force to suppress this place and obtain the legendary fragment, this was a very foolish idea. How was he supposed to obtain legendary fragment, or in other words, the shard of dragon scale? This wasn't a competition of big eaters or wrestling, but a competition of true strength. A bloody battle. The multiple-headed tribe was bellicose and bloodthirsty, so if he wanted to win their respect and obtain the pass, he had to rely on killing. The arena of death was a place where the multiple-headed tribe would hold martial arts competitions, and with how bloody this tribe was, a martial arts competition was actually a battle to the death. It had to end with the collapse of one side. If he wanted to win the legendary fragment, he would have to win 10 battles in the arena of death. Because the battles here were all life or death battles, winning 10 battles was equivalent to winning 10 battles in a row, and killing 10 opponents in a row. Whichever battle they lost in the middle would mean death. However, the arena of death was still yet to open, so it was necessary to wait for more outsiders to join the tournament. Only then would a bloody battle officially begin. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ling Han first went to find out how he was going to buy the energy crystals. There was no need for Dao stones here. If one wanted to buy something from the multiple-headed tribe, they could only do so through winning in the arena of death. Every 3 victories, he would be able to obtain an energy crystal. If they wanted to obtain a large number of energy crystals, it would be best for everyone to take part in the tournament. However, once they battled, one of the fighters would have to die, and it would be too cruel and dangerous. Thus, everyone discussed for a while, and only Ling Han would participate. Though Qi Menghan's strength was superior to Ling Han's, firstly, her defense was not as high as Ling Han's, and her ability to preserve her life was slightly weaker. Secondly, she was a woman, and an exquisite beauty at that. If she were to kill 10 people in a row, that would be too damaging to her image. Most importantly, in these 10 battles, the majority of their opponents should be outsiders, so they still had to worry about whether Qi Menghan's heart was tough enough. After waiting for several days, the arena of death finally opened. There were enough people. Ling Han went over to register, and very soon he was assigned a number. In the arena, everyone only had a code name. From the afternoon onwards, the battles began. Ling Han's opponent was a young man from the demon race. He looked very ordinary, but when he occasionally swept an eye over him, he would explode with an astonishing coldness. So my opponent is you," the young man from the demon race said calmly. He obviously recognized Ling Han, but he actually wasn't afraid at all. It was clear that he had a high opinion of himself. "Ling Han, there are no ley lines here to borrow power from. Today will be the day of your death." Ling Han shook his head. Originally, he was still a little conflicted about killing a stranger. But since he had entered here, He had to be prepared for life and death. However, hearing these words from the other party, the slightest bit of conflict in his heart naturally disappeared completely. People always like to deceive themselves. He smiled. You would rather believe that my strength comes from formations. That way you would feel superior. Unfortunately, this would only cause you to lose your life. Bullshit! The demon race youth roared. He then charged at Ling Han at an incredible speed, transforming into a streak of golden light that vaguely revealed the shape of a rabbit. Was this guy's original form a rabbit? No wonder he had run so quickly. Ling Han chuckled and threw a punch. Pong! The air shattered layer by layer like glass, and then the young man from the demon race was seen stumbling backwards. His whole body was covered with blood, and there were traces of blood at the corner of his lips. His face was filled with shock, as if he could not believe or accept that the gap in strength between himself and Ling Han was actually so wide. He hurriedly raised his hands and shouted loudly, I forfeit! I forfeit! This gap in strength was too wide. He did not even have the chance to go all out, so naturally, he could only raise his hands in surrender. Humph, in the arena of death, there are only warriors who die standing, and there are no cowards who live on their knees, a three-headed man declared coldly, his three faces filled with disdain. The young man from the demon race didn't dare to attack Ling Han. Instead, he immediately turned around to flee. It didn't matter that he had lost. There were still other people in the team. As long as one of them could win 10 battles, he would also be able to pass the trial smoothly. You're seeking death. A multi-headed person moved. A golden light shot out, penetrating through the head of that young man from the demon race. The young man from the demon race instantly collapsed, completely dead. Instantly, the cheers of innumerable clansmen rang out from the spectators' seats, and the outsiders fell silent. In the outside world, if one couldn't defeat their opponent, they could surrender. This was normal, but in this place, even if they surrendered, they would still die, which made those who had enlisted in a moment of hot-bloodedness begin to regret it. Had they really prepared themselves for this? After a few battles, a large number of people immediately chose to withdraw from the competition. This was too cruel. It was either life or death, which made a great many young sprouts that had grown up in protective environments completely unable to bear it. However, once they withdrew from the tournament, they would no longer be able to participate in the tournament inside the arena of death. Thankfully, everyone was presently in teams, and as long as one person in the team managed to pass, the whole team would be able to obtain the entry permit. Thus, there was still hope for these people who had withdrawn from the competition. The majority of the teams chose to wait. After all, there were too many elites presently, and if they forced themselves, they would only die young. The result was that there was a serious shortage in the number of participants. Ling Han waited for 2 days, and only then did a new opponent appear. However, it was not an outsider, but rather a multi-headed person. Actually, Ling Han was still a little conflicted about fighting outsiders. After all, too many people were complete strangers to him, yet they still had to fight to the death. However, it was a different story for the multi-headed people. Ling Han believed that these beings had long since been annihilated in history. Now, they had only manifested because of a single thought of an elite. Thus, there was naturally no burden on his mind. He could kill them however he liked. This was a two-headed person, and his battle prowess was very strong. Multiple-headed people were a race where the number of heads determined one's natural talent. The more heads one had, the higher one's natural talent would naturally be. This was very simple. One more head meant one more mind. To a core formation tier cultivator, that was one more celestial core. This naturally had a great impact. Then was the two-headed person equivalent to 2 cultivators at the same cultivation level of the core formation tier? Not really, because though there were 2 celestial cores, the amount of power one could deliver at the same time was still limited by the physique. However, with another celestial core, he would be able to inscribe a few more mystical powers, and this naturally would greatly increase his battle prowess. Thus, the more heads there were, the stronger one would be in a battle of equal cultivation levels. Of course, how could a mere two-headed person be a match for Ling Han? If it was not for the fact that Ling Han wanted to familiarize himself with the unique traits of the multi-headed people, he was completely capable of insta-killing his opponent with a single move. Now, however, he had dragged on the battle for over a dozen moves before he finally blasted his opponent into dust with a single punch. It was clearly just the manifestation of thought from an elite, but this multi-headed person was incredibly real. With a punch, blood spurted in all directions. In fact, one could even sense the unwillingly departed soul of his opponent. Subsequently, Ling Han's opponents were still multiple-headed people, from 2 heads to 3 heads, and the number was endlessly increasing. Though they were both in the consummate level of core formation tier, the battle prowess was also rising steadily, and had even increased exponentially. But in front of a super freak like Ling Han, so what if he was strong? He would be able to kill him with a single hand. After battling for a long time, Ling Han's understanding of the multiple-headed tribe also increased. This also made him very envious of the abilities of the multiple-headed tribe. If he could also have 1 more mind, or even 3 or 4 in fact, just how much would his battle prowess increase by? No wonder the great clans of the ancient times would be interested in the multiple-headed tribe, and capture them for research in order to obtain the secret of cultivating multiple minds. This was indeed tempting. However, these people of the multiple-headed tribe were only illusions created by the thought of an elite. To say nothing of the fact that Ling Han couldn't do anything to investigate them, even if he wanted to, there was nothing he could do. Unknowingly, Ling Han had already obtained 9 consecutive wins. He was only 1 battle away from passing the stage. Qi Menghan, Song Lan, and the others were all very relaxed, thinking that this final battle was still very easy for Ling Han. It was only going through the motions. They were already thinking about what they would be able to see on the 3rd island. Very quickly, the night passed. Ling Han arrived at the arena, and it wasn't long before he saw his final opponent, Lin Lang. He had never thought that this final opponent would actually be him. Ling Han smiled faintly. When he had been in the cauldron forging tier, he had already thrashed this imperial sun. Now he was sure that it would be the same. Ling Han, Lin Lang said through gritted teeth. Even his hair was standing on end, revealing endless killing intent. I finally waited for this chance. Oh, I remember that you were the one who was defeated last time, right? What is it? Have you found your confidence from somewhere? Ling Han asked with a smile. Lin Lang gradually withdrew his killing intent and revealed a proud expression. I have to admit, your strength in a battle of equals is indeed amazing, capable of matching me. How shameless, Ling Han mumbled. Lin Lang's face flushed red. In the previous battle, he had indeed lost to Ling Han, and it was not a so-called equal match as he had said. But how could he possibly admit it? This time, I'm 1 minor level above you, so you're definitely going to die, he said. Since you're so confident, come. Ling Han crooked a finger at him. Lin Lang raised his hand, and the jade water sword appeared once more. This naturally wasn't the Fire Cloud Imperial clan's imperial weapon. It was only a replica, a standard weapon that every clansman of the Lin clan could possess. However, Lin Lang was the imperial son after all. The jade water sword in his hand was much stronger than the standard spirit tool. Moreover, as he advanced into the core formation tier, the standard weapon he used naturally also rose to a higher level. This jade water sword could be said to be the strongest level of the core formation tier. With sword in hand, coupled with his incomparably powerful strength, Lin Lang's confidence exploded. Ling Han didn't summon the primal chaos lightning tower. As he saw it, it wasn't to the point that he had to use this precious tool yet. Surrender your life! Lin Lang shouted loudly, and charged towards Ling Han. He slashed out with his sword, which turned into an ice dragon that bared its fangs and brandished its claws. In fact, it really was exuding a sliver of dragon's might. This was very interesting. Since the ancestral King Fire Clouds was called Fire Clouds, he should be skilled in fire element cultivation techniques, but the imperial weapon he used was ice element. Ling Han mocked internally, while his figure charged out, greeting Lin Lang's attack. Hong! 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 The 2 young prodigies exchanged blows. Lin Lang was the imperial son, and he had also cultivated to the consummate level of core formation tier. His battle prowess was naturally not inferior to Bailey Che, and with the addition of the replica of the Imperial weapon, his strength was further boosted. Ling Han's raw power was inferior to that of Lin Lang's. Thus, in this clash, he was naturally sent flying repeatedly, but it could not hold up to the fact that he had the primal chaos celestial core, which allowed him to dissolve the power that he had been hit with ease. Lin Lang gritted his teeth. Was he still unable to defeat Ling Han? It was understandable that he had lost to Ling Han the first time. After all, Ling Han was more powerful than him, but now, he clearly had an advantage in power, yet he only had an advantage and couldn't gain the upper hand. This drove him crazy. As the Imperial Son, was it so difficult for him to defeat a lowly commoner? He was dissatisfied. Furthermore, this was a mortal duel, and one of the two of them would definitely die. He didn't want to die. Lin Lang roared loudly and began to burn the Imperial blood. His whole person immediately exuded a terrifying aura. Uncontrollably, his body had already enlarged greatly. This was the side effect of burning the Imperial blood. If his cultivation level was high enough, he would be able to control it as he willed it, and whether his size would change or not would be completely up to a single thought. However, it could not be denied that he was presently inconceivably strong. After combusting the Imperial blood, it was practically equivalent to being possessed by a young great emperor, and just how powerful was a young great emperor? Boom! Lin Lang's sword swept over, and endless divine light surged. It was indescribably terrifying. Ling Han also frowned and retreated. Lin Lang's raw power looked to be at 31 heavens, and was even stronger than a Buddha son like Shi Yongming. Of course, it was highly possible that Shi Yongming wasn't a real Buddha son, so it was normal for his battle prowess to be weak. Now, after combusting his Imperial blood, his power had suddenly risen to the height of 40 heavens. This was too terrifying. Even with Ling Han's strength, he did not dare to take it head-on. Shua, the sword swept past, yet missed its target. Lin Lang laughed loudly. Present, he had an absolute advantage. The Jade Water sword swept out again, while his left hand formed into a claw and delivered a palm strike at Ling Han. A fiery flame surged out, turning into tens of thousands of flaming spears. Ling Han retreated again. The present Lin Lang was too terrifying. Taking him head-on was definitely not a good idea. Brat. Continue being arrogant, Lin Lang said with a smile. Fuck. You are igniting the Imperial blood for a burst of power. What's there to be proud of? By the way, the speed at which your Imperial blood recovers is really fast. Ling Han was puzzled. The last time he had exchanged blows with Lin Lang was only a few years ago. In such a short period of time, how could Lin Lang be able to combust his Imperial blood? Even for the Imperial son, whose bloodline was pure, he could not have recovered so quickly. Lin Lang's expression involuntarily changed slightly, appearing slightly ugly. Under normal circumstances, even for him, he would need at least a few dozen years to recover his Imperial blood. However, he was the Imperial son, and in order to ensure his absolute strength in a battle of equal cultivation levels, the Fire Cloud Imperial clan used their Saint blood as a catalyst, forcibly speeding up the recovery of his Imperial blood. This was Saint blood. Though it could not compare to the Imperial blood, it was still indescribably precious. It could be said that the Fire Cloud Imperial clan had expended a great deal. Furthermore, he himself was also experiencing great pain. This kind of method of forcibly speeding up the recovery of the Imperial blood was too nature-defying, so he naturally would not be having a good time. Now that Ling Han was talking about it, Lin Lang's painful memories were naturally brought back to him, causing his expression to become ugly. After losing to Ling Han, he had suffered quite a few rumors in the clan. In fact, some clan elders had even suggested that he be disqualified from the position of Imperial son. In any case, there was not just one person in the clan that had natural talent like his. Die! He roared in fury. As long as he killed Ling Han, this kind of humiliation would disappear without a trace, and he would also be able to stabilize his position as Imperial son. Hong! 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 The Imperial son combusted his Imperial blood, and added with the replica imperial weapon, this battle prowess was really too terrifying. In the same cultivation level, was there anyone that could match him? Of course there was. Ling Han wasn't afraid at all. If he was also at the consummate level of the core formation tier, to say nothing of the fact that he was only burning his imperial blood, he was confident that he could defeat even a true young great emperor. Of course, he was still only in the late stage of the core formation tier at present. The gap in raw power was too wide, which led to a huge gap in battle prowess. Ling Han humphed as he unleashed his murderous aura. Wang, the attack landed, but it was completely ineffective. Haha. After using this kind of attack on me once, you still want to use it again? Lin Lang sneered, appearing extremely disdainful. Too naive. Ling Han knew that this was not because Lin Lang had cultivated some kind of divine sense cultivation technique, but rather because he had the treasure that the great emperor had refined years ago, which could block all negative effects. Previously, when he had been fighting with Lin Lang, this move was very useful. Now, it was actually ineffective, which meant that Lin Lang had not worn this kind of treasure at that time. Perhaps his cultivation level hadn't been high enough at the time, or perhaps even the Fire Cloud Imperial clan didn't have so many treasures and it was finally his turn now, but no matter what, Lin Lang wouldn't be affected by this murderous aura attack. Regarding the barrage of murderous aura, Ling Han only had a slight sliver of hope. After this move was useless, he activated the Primal Chaos Celestial Core. This had already been experimented on Qi Menghan, and even a treasure personally concocted by the Great Emperor could not stop its might. Wang, the Primal Chaos Celestial Core vibrated slightly, releasing a supreme aura. What? Lin Lang immediately exclaimed in astonishment. This was because his battle prowess had been forcefully suppressed by three heavens. How was this possible? This time, he clearly had the precious treasure to protect himself. This had been personally refined by the Great Emperor. Could it be that Ling Han also possessed a Great Emperor-level treasure? It was absolutely impossible for him to believe that Ling Han had actually weakened his battle prowess by three heavens with his own abilities. A core formation tier was even more awesome than a Great Emperor? Who was he kidding? But among Great Emperors, who would be weaker than whom? Why was the Emperor tier treasure in Ling Han's possession able to overwhelm his own? It was fine. On second thought, he suppressed his shock. That was because even if his battle prowess was weakened by three heavens, he would still be able to crush Ling Han. Then, after killing this opponent, the treasure in his hands would become his spoils of battle. Very good, very good. Ling Han, I really have to thank you, he said with a grin, as he brandished his sword in pursuit. Oh, Ling Han smiled faintly. I want to thank you for gifting me a treasure. Lin Lang laughed loudly, as if he was already stepping on Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. Usually, I'm the one saying this to others. Apologies. It is not up to you to decide today. Lin Lang's attacks were even stronger. The imperial blood was limited, and he had to kill Ling Han as soon as possible. Otherwise, when this wave of power had passed, he would no longer be able to do anything to Ling Han. Boom! The Jade Water Sword attacked, bringing with it supreme might, wanting to cut Ling Han in half. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Ling Han smirked coldly. The Primal Chaos Lightning Tower was finally unleashed. All of a sudden, it was as if the air had turned into water, rolling out in waves. This was the future Imperial weapon. Even if it was limited by Ling Han's cultivation level and he could not bestow the might of the Imperial weapon on it, the origin gold itself had great might. The Jade Water Sword arrived and struck the Primal Chaos Chi. However, it only managed to slice through it slightly before being suppressed by the heavy Primal Chaos Chi. Lin Lang felt his wrist sink, and the long sword in his hand fell straight down. He paled in shock, but he had not even finished the thought when he saw the Primal Chaos Lightning Tower shake again and send out a bolt of lightning. At this moment, he was burning his imperial blood, which was practically equivalent to a young great emperor. His reaction speed was naturally fast, and he immediately shot out a punch which landed on the lightning. Lightning blazed, and Lin Lang stumbled back. He felt an indescribable numbness in his left hand. How could this be? He exclaimed in shock. looking in shock at the primal chaos extreme lightning tower that was floating above Ling Han's head. It was presently emanating primal chaos chi, causing a powerful feeling of helplessness to rise up in his heart. Was this an imperial weapon? His pupils involuntarily dilated. As the imperial son, it was impossible that he had not seen the imperial weapon before. In fact, he had even personally touched it before because to fuse the 9 cauldrons into one, he would have to use the power of the imperial weapon. Thus, he was no stranger to the imperial weapon. The 9-story tower in front of him made him feel as if he had seen an imperial weapon. No, the imperial weapon was far more powerful than this. This wasn't an imperial weapon, but a precious tool forged from the origin gold. Lin Lang's breathing instantly quickened.